So maybe I'll just explain to everybody who's listening how we've known each other. I'm going to tell my side of the story, and then you can tell your side of the story. So basically, I remember you as the 434 OG. You're probably one of the first people who I've had contact with, or at least one of the first people I remember being part of the 434 community. So I remember we go back to 2018, is it now? End of 2018, like December, November time. That was when the first video was released. Yeah. And I remember you popped up somewhere. I think it was, I don't know, Facebook or YouTube comments. I don't remember now. But I remember Libby, and I remember then I think you had your face somewhere. And I know that you were one of the first people I spoke to. But that's not the main part, because there's still a lot of original 434 people who are in the community. There's actually quite a lot of them.
Yeah.
The main thing that makes you stand out, makes you special, is the London meetup. That was the first meetup, the first 434 meetup. And whoever was there, they know there was a super chaotic type of a setup, because it turned out that whoever was in charge of organizing the space and making sure that we have the equipment, they didn't do a good job, and they actually didn't do everything on time. So when I came in, my plan was to greet everybody at the door and just wait for everybody to come in and then start the whole thing. Turned out that there were no cables, nothing was ready. So I was busy just trying to set up everything. It was just chaotic, and it was very disorganized, and everybody was very confused. I wasn't paying attention to people. And it didn't feel nice. It was the first 434 meetup. It was very, very weird. And the way it happened was not according to the plan. But then you came in and I saw your face. And I was like, oh, finally someone I know. Finally someone that makes me feel like it's all in the right place. Like that was the moment for me. That was the moment when I felt like, okay, everything's fine. I don't think I ever told you this. But
No,
yeah, but that's what happened. I think I mentioned that I recognized, because I think I came over and I said hi to you. I remember you, one of the first people I said hi to back then when you came in through the door. But yeah, and then obviously it was. By the way, I never got feedback from you about how the meetup went, because but okay, we can talk about this some other time. But yeah, the funny thing was that we actually afterwards we went to the pub. And it was actually a good meetup. I really liked it. And then we went to the pub, which was actually when we went to the pub was actually more interesting than the meetup, because it wasn't just me talking, it was just interaction. And then I talked to everybody except for you. And then we obviously discussed the whole thing, and there's a good reason for that, why we didn't talk. But the funny thing that happened afterwards, and the reason why I invited you to this podcast, is because we started talking on the phone after that. And I'm not sure if you know this, but I mean, we've been talking back and forth for almost 2 years now, right? Is that how long it's been?
Yeah, that's crazy. It doesn't feel like that long, but yeah.
But it is. Like, even when someone tells me, like, oh, I've been watching your videos 3 years, and I'm like, what? I've been doing this for 1 year. And then I go, wait. It's the first video was uploaded. I even went to the first video. I was like, oh, that's November 2018. So, looking at the numbers, that is the third year. And I'm like, that's crazy. It didn't really feel like that. But the funny thing is that you probably also don't know this, but you hold the absolute record of the length of a conversation I've ever had with anyone over the phone. We spoke for 4 hours, didn't we?
God, yeah. I think it was about 3.5.
It was something like that.
I remember it being a long time. I was like,
I never talked to anyone for so long. That was really crazy. Because I don't really, I'd rather talk to people, face to face, but we live quite far from each other. Yeah. So it's a bit of a problem. We almost met recently, didn't we? If it wasn't for the lockdown, we would have probably met, because we were supposed to meet somewhere halfway through between, where were you come from?
My hometown's like kind of near London.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm in Manchester. We were supposed to meet somewhere in the middle, and something then, the pandemic happened. So that wasn't possible. But that's the reason why I invited you, because we have this ability to talk for a long time, and these are actually intelligent conversations. We're not talking about politics, we're talking about social and social issues, all kinds of psychedelic and everything that's related to 434, we actually have meaningful conversations. At least that's what I like to think, that we have meaningful conversations that make sense. And we get weird sometimes, don't we?
I get weird a lot of times.
We sometimes we go off the tangent sometimes. But I wanted to talk to you about this because I started this. It's obviously about the video that I recorded when things get too much, and there's more than 120 videos on 434 now. It's one of those videos that people like. It's not very popular, not compared to other videos. But for me personally, it's a very important video, and it's a very relevant video to what's happening now, and also to the type of people that 434 attracts. Because it's only me who knows what people come with to 434 because they message me, and I'm the only person who actually gets these messages. Obviously, if people comment on under videos in the comment section, then everybody can read it. But people don't do that when the problems are serious, and people come to me with serious issues. And the thing that I'm most proud of is that 434 stop people from committing suicide. This is a message that I get a lot, and I remember one of the first ones that I got was someone said that I wanted to leave the house to kill myself, and I somehow found your channel, and I ended up just walking around the house. I came back, sat down at my desk, and I decided I'm not going to kill myself that day. And that was the first message I received when I realized that there's a lot of people who think that life is too much for them. And after that, I made the video about depression. That was back like 2 years ago. So I just wanted to make everybody aware that 434 is actually attracting a lot of people with serious problems. And these are not jokes, because people who take psychedelics are people who are looking for help. I was one of them. I was basically trying to cure depression, and I succeeded. That's why I'm such a big advocate of psychedelics, because they do make a huge difference when it comes to people's mental state. So I started talking to Embed Starcy, to Sandy. I'm not sure if you remember that video.
I do. That was a good video, actually.
Exactly. So we started talking from a bit of a different angle, because this issue of too much, it has different, you can look at this from different perspectives. In our case, me and Sandy, we go back the same, probably for as long as with you. We've been talking for a long time. It's just that Sandy is in LA, so that's a bit of a different relationship where we cannot really, we can only talk on social media. But with her, we concentrate more on being aware of what's happening. And this is about my other video, actually my two other videos. One, we're not sheep, we're not cattle. The other one is the last one, which is everything is a lie. So basically, there's many aspects of life where you feel like it's getting too much. And I know from our conversations that you also, I wouldn't use the word suffer, but you also have a problem with occasionally things getting out of, maybe not out of control, but basically being overwhelming. Am I right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like kind of normal, especially in the spiritual field, or people who are interested in, gaining more conscious awareness, because I think when you come down to this life with a sort of a higher level of consciousness, you are sort of expected to be able to navigate like more difficult challenges. Like it's almost like the universe steps it up. I feel like they're like, right, this is somebody who's not just sort of a beginner. They're kind of an intermediate, or kind of like, they're a step up beyond that. So I think the way that the matrix is sort of set out is that people actually are supposed to be having a lot of a harder time, I guess. It's like, you've passed the main stage, and it's like it's really stepping things up now. But it really can push you to your absolute limits sometimes, and that's really hard to navigate, I think.
I remember reading a story once. That was when I started thinking about it differently. There was a story of a girl who, she lived in Africa, and during those Tutsi wars, I think there were Tutsi wars. So basically those clan wars or whatever they have in Africa, she witnessed her whole family being killed by another clan, and she was a witness to that. And she said her conclusion from this, obviously it devastated her because she was a young girl when she saw that. She said that God never gives you more than you can handle. And she said, I'm a proof of that because it happened to me. I went through this and I'm okay. Well, not okay, but I survived. I survived this mentally because I'm still alive. I'm a functioning human being. I remember reading this one sentence. Of course, she talks about God. I refer to it as energy. Whatever we call it, the higher power never will give you more than you can handle because, as you said, the more advanced you are, the more you will need to experience and the more difficult the reality will get for you.
Definitely.
And that's exactly the reason why I wanted to make this video, to make everybody aware that, number one, you're stronger than you think. Because if I told you that somebody's going to kill your whole family in front of you, you'd be like, I cannot take this, it's not something I can survive. Yet this person, she said that she survived it. She was fine. I'm obviously simplifying the whole thing, but she survived this. She was still, as a normal person. You would never say that that's what she went through if you were to look at her, from the outside. But inside, there must have been some damage. Obviously, it's just that this must have been something that she was supposed to go through. According to this theory that we come here and we come here with a mission that we decide about ourselves. Whatever we go through is supposed to happen. And then whatever suffering we go through, it actually has a meaning. I believe once you exit this reality, once you leave this body, that's when you remember everything. That's when you realize, oh, that's what was supposed to happen. So I don't know if that's how you feel, or
Absolutely, yeah.
If you were to think about your life, would you say that it's been difficult so far, or does it feel like training?
God, I mean, it's hard sometimes to answer that, because if you compare it to like that girl you were just talking about, for example, I'd say it's like my life's, been really simple, but I do feel like it's constantly pushing me. I think the reason why I can cope with it is because I'm used to it. But yeah, like it's not just even the intensity of like the events that you experience. It's the fact that especially as things are speeding up, as people are starting to wake up more, these really intense events happen like more and more regularly, almost like earthquakes. Yeah, basically it kind of I find the intensity of things speeds up, like the amount of intense things that happen, like that you question, like how the fuck did that pop into my life, or how did that happen? They seem to speed up. So not just like so not only do you experience them more frequently, but the gap between them, it gets smaller. So yeah, I don't know whether to give like examples or anything.
Yeah, well, obviously, if there's anything in your life that you feel like was a part of this process, because I absolutely agree with you. I think this is what happens. As you said, the best example is when, well, the best analogy is that the more advanced you are, the more experienced you are, the heavier stuff starts appearing in your life.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you an example then. 2020, I mean, I think everybody's started to experience these events pop up more and more frequently. So for example, I just started a new job, started working there, got on really well, went home for like a weekend in March 2020. Literally just to visit family and stuff, and then overnight they were like, right, that's it, university's closed, you can't come back, you can't go into work, you can't do anything, all of your friends and stuff, you can't see them anymore, and indefinitely until things open back up. And I was like, right, this is like a zombie apocalypse almost, like things are going to be shut down for a long time, maybe even a year. That's what I was expecting. And yeah, the amount of stuff that's happened, it's like I've moved twice, I've become like estranged from one of my parents, I've I've had like loads of really weird awakening experiences, which have been positive in the sense that, you know, they've opened me up, and I've been able to sort of see through the veil a lot more. But at the same time, with that level of responsibility, there's also that increased sense of like instability in your life. Like as soon as you realize like just how much stuff there is that you're unaware of, it's like kind of scary actually, because suddenly you don't you realize that you have absolutely no idea just, you know, what's going on and what's going to pop up the next day. So it's like, you know, something amazing happens one day, something really shit happens the next, and you kind of realize that you don't have any control over that. And if you try and get control over that, that's probably your ego talking, and it's probably just going to make things worse. So you kind of got like no choice but to surrender. Otherwise, you know, you might end up mucking up things even worse.
Surrender is the right word. That's what you. It's funny that every religion speaks about it, and that's also how you go into a psychedelic experience. The more you resist, the more you'll suffer. And it's. I really like this analogy because I remember fighting the negative part of the mushroom trip always, you know, the nausea and everything like that. I was always like, I gotta come up with an idea how to do something about it. I don't really suffer that much physically from the side effects of mushrooms, but yeah, with higher doses it happens. But the best thing you can do is just relax and let it be, and whatever happens, it happens, and then it's a completely different experience. The interesting thing you said is the actual perspective. It's that's what I wanted to talk about, is basically the way you look at things. Because like when you describe, that's why I asked you about an example from your life. You described this, you know, this lockdown thing, especially for us in England. I think it was quite tough. It was very, very draconian. The fact that they you know, the problem with England is that it doesn't have a constitution, and they just came up with this, for everybody who's not in England or UK, they don't let you come in close contact with your family members. This is insane. Like, they decide who can come into your house, and they decide who you can see, which is absolutely bananas, because number one, no one cares. People basically don't really, only, you know, typical scared type of, you know, mainstream media type of people will stick to these rules. Everybody else I can see, everybody in my neighborhood, they meet all the time, they do whatever, nobody cares.
That's most people though. Like even my mum, she texted me, she's like, oh, I'm really worried about, because if I go out and exercise now, I can't leave the house again. I'm like, Mum, no one's following you. Like, we're in the middle of a suburb, in the middle of nowhere. She's like, yeah, you know, I'm worried that I'm going to get fined £200. It's crazy, they're out of control.
Insane that they actually, because people are not really, they're not trying to follow the rules, they're policing themselves. And it's like auto-censorship inside of your head. And it's like, how did this happen? I mean, England is very different when it comes to this. England, when I came here almost 15 years ago, I was like, I've never seen a country, I've never seen a society so obedient. And I remember saying to my friends, I said, if shit hits the fan, if anything happens in this country, you guys are screwed, because you don't think like rebels. There's no rebels in this society. They removed them, not only physically, but they also removed everything from your head, where you're not supposed to, you know, you're not supposed to really question anything. You're supposed to follow the rules and listen to your government, who's like, I don't know, like God. The Queen and the government are everything in this country, and they're like every other country. They're just, you know, they're just tyrants. Whoever's in politics are there for one reason, and that's power, or occasionally profit. But it's pretty much that, and people don't see through that. People in this country are incredibly, I wouldn't say closed-minded, but it's just limited in their understanding of reality. And don't get me wrong, it's a very positive, we talked about this before, it's a very positive and very civil society. It's a very safe society. It's really good to live here, especially if you want to raise your children. But when it comes to anything that becomes a problem in terms of your civil liberties, this is the worst place to be in. It's exactly for that reason. There's no constitution in this country. You have no methods of even, you know, trying to legally get your rights back. No. And if the government takes it away, there's no way they'll give it back to you, because, you know, why would they? And this is really scary. But what I was trying to say is that for us, it was quite difficult here. So it's getting, apparently we have now this whole calendar, everything is going back to normal, whatever. I don't trust them, but let's see what happens.
I don't either.
Well, let's assume that, best case scenario, everything's going back to normal soon. 2022 should be a normal year for all of us. If we look back at 20 and 21, these 2 years were absolutely insane in the history, not only in our history, but in the history of humankind. This is something we've never experienced. So for many, that was too much. That was something that they cannot handle. We have an increased number of people who kill themselves. We have a huge mental problem now. I was just this morning through post came NHS survey. They want to know how I'm doing mentally. Like they're asking everybody here. They want to know if you're being affected by by lockdowns and everything else. So it's interesting that they're monitoring the whole thing because they're aware of this. But what I'm trying to say is that this seems like a catastrophe, like a complete disaster for on a personal level. It's very unhealthy. But looking at a perspective of someone who's been through real problems, and I'm talking here specifically about my grandmother. My grandmother, as a little girl, went through 4 concentration camps, and I mentioned that in the video. I recorded an interview with her 5 years ago, and it's been on my hard drive for 5 years because I don't know what to do with it. We talked for 3 hours where she described what happened to her. I mean, nothing really bad. The funny thing is that her family is made of 7 children and 2 parents, so those 9 of them. They all survived this journey through concentration camps. They were many times separated, then they came back. After 5 years of all of this, they were basically back where they started. Like nothing happened to them. Everyone was she had a broken leg. Other than that, they were extremely lucky. This is so unusual because I know all of these stories. I'm from Eastern Europe, so I know exactly what these stories look like. Both in case of there's 2 main countries involved, like Germany, Poland, plus Russia. Between 10 and 20% of all of the population was wiped out. They disappeared. They were killed. So that's 1/5 of the country goes. And in her case, all 9 people survived. So I have this interview where she talks in detail about what she saw, what she experienced, and these are horrifying stories, and it doesn't fit the 434 narrative. There's nothing I can do with this. I want to publish it somewhere, I don't know where, and I've been sitting on it for 5 years. But the thing is that when you look at life from her perspective, because that's how she started life. She started life from witnessing humanity at its worst, from the worst atrocities that humans have ever experienced, and that was the beginning of her life. The moment where you're supposed to play with dolls and observe butterflies, that's when you see what humans have to offer in terms of just killing and everything like that. So she is like one of the most loving and caring person that I've ever had in my life, and she's the reason why I am who I am. It's a very important person for me in my life. But she's so much healthier than I am, where I'm a person who's never really gone through any difficulties. When I compare my life experiences to hers, it's nothing. It's like, talking about this African girl who witnessed her whole family being butchered, and you dare to talk about hard times just sitting at home watching Netflix. So not to belittle anyone's suffering and their mental state, the thing is that I think this scope, this spectrum of human suffering is so wide that we can take so much more and nothing really happens. Obviously, I believe that your suffering is relevant to your life experiences. I think you have these tiny little boxes that you fill with happiness, and you fill them with sadness and whatever you define in your life that to be the content of that box. But I think it's not about the content of the box, it's more about what do you compare this experience to in your life. So if your life has been amazing and a small thing happens, then for you it's an absolute disaster. So if there's someone who's experienced a lot of adversities, a lot of trauma, for them the same event will have absolutely no meaning. And I think it's important to keep that in mind, because that's what psychedelics allow you to. This is what I was trying to talk about in that video, that once you take mushrooms, they open this door where you're allowed to leave the human space, and you see that this human space is just a tiny, like a container of your tiny problems that doesn't really, they don't really matter in the big picture. And I believe everything we complain about and everything we feel bad about, it's because we don't really have that big picture. And that's actually a symptom of a really good life if you complain about having to stay at home for 1 year. Because that's not really that big of a deal when you look at bigger stuff. Let's say that, I don't know, as I said in the previous video, you wake up tomorrow and there's alien UFOs in the sky, and they're not here to give you new technology. They're here to take over the world, the human world. So you wake up tomorrow, there are UFOs, and that's the war of worlds scenario, and everybody's screwed. And then you think, oh my God, the last year was amazing because there were no UFOs in the sky. And you completely shift, your perspective shifts, and now what you thought was the ultimate disaster in your life now turns out to be the last amazing year of your life, because now you have to fight aliens. So I think mushrooms are right. It's all a matter of perspective.
And I think also something that came up for me whilst you were talking about your grandma, about the fact that she miraculously managed to survive along with her family, is that even when really, really bad stuff is going on, like this situation with lockdown and stuff, it's not good at all. It's, causing an extreme amount of like chaos. But I noticed that I've been taken care of. So like people, are really worried about the vaccine right now. Half the people are like, anxious to go get jabbed, and the other half don't want a microchip. I'm probably one of those people. But I kind of found that like the thing that sort of kept me sane through that, because you could just really easily spiral like, fuck, I don't have control over my body anymore. I can't travel anywhere. I can't move anywhere. It's like that constricted feeling of not being allowed to have basic rights because you're not, allowing people to like medically intervene with you against your will. But I think the thing that sort of kept me sane through that is the knowledge that like, well, first of all, as you said, like you're never given anything more than you can handle, but also that you're actually being looked out for. That this is why I think mushrooms help, because you're given the bigger perspective. There's stuff that we can't see right now. And it's sort of like, opening the curtains, you can sort of see backstage and everything, like, oh, that's how things work. And without that context, I think it can drive you a little bit mad, which is why meditation works, because it tells you like, okay, get out of your head, basically. Don't believe your thoughts, just treat them as mental events. And actually, like, during lockdown, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to panic about this. Honestly, I in a way, I'm kind of not surprised that this happened. Because I don't know, it just felt like something huge was kind of going to happen. And if it did, it wouldn't surprise me, knowing what goes on generally. Yeah. But I was looked after. Without this pandemic, I would not have actually finished my degree and passed that. I definitely wouldn't have. So it basically just saved my ass there. And then I wouldn't have moved back home. I wouldn't have met people that I've met, had opportunities that I've had, had insights that I've been given, and, ended up in the right place at the right time. So even though, it's shitty that I couldn't, go traveling, whatever, have fun, let off some steam after studying and stuff, and it is a real threat in terms of basic human rights. I just feel grateful because I've sort of rode the storm, and in return, like, I've been looked after, and I think by forces that I don't understand and I can't see right now.
That's the good thing about psychedelics, is that they give you answers to those important questions. Because I remember going into the first mushroom trip well, not the first, because the first one was a total surprise, but the second one, where I already knew that I have the power to Google anything in the metaphysical dimension. That was the moment when I knew that I'm going in with a very well-defined plan and a list of questions. And I remember just bitching. That's the best word I can use, just bitching about my life, how miserable I am. And I remember this machine, I was just listening to me with this stoic type of, just completely unmoved by my emotional outbursts, and they're just listening. And at the end, I remember just this one information. What are you complaining about? You're being taken care of. And obviously, it's not like you just get one sentence. On mushrooms, you get automatically upload of this awareness that comes with this sentence. This sentence basically like a tip of an iceberg, and then it's like the file name, and then you need to unpack the file, and turns out inside you have this encyclopedia of your nonsense. And then it turned out that I was allowed to, with this upload, I was allowed to review my life. Turns out that nothing really happened to me. And there was me just thinking all the worst things happened in my life, and I have depression because of that, and now I need help. And it turns out nothing really happened. Like every time something bad could have happened, I was taken care of. And we're talking about some really serious stuff. Like I remember one of the most traumatic, one of the most dangerous situations in my life was I was going to a huge techno festival, and it was badly organized in a way that whoever designed the whole entrance, they didn't take into account that tens of thousands of people just waiting outside and wanting to get in as soon as possible. So it turned out into some sort of a stampede. So basically I was pushed against the wall, and I literally thought that that would be my last moment. I thought that I was going to die. There were people who had like broken limbs, that kind of stuff. But luckily nothing really happened, because I think police came in or something like that, and I survived. But I wasn't far. I was like slowly losing consciousness. It was really, really bad.
You know, I've had similar experiences actually. Like there was a time when my cousin sat on my head with a beanbag. My parents weren't watching or whatever, they were just chatting with each other, and I almost suffocated. And there was a time when I was like going out for a walk with my dad. He turns his head for a second, and I'm stood on a ledge, and I'm about to tip over and fall. I think I was about 3 at that age, but they look after you. They make sure that nothing actually happens, and if it does, it's because you were supposed to, and then you've got your exit. You've got your exit portal, I guess you could call it, and you're out.
So you were walking on a ledge?
Yeah, there's this I don't know how to describe it, but it's like a drain basically, like a ditch, but it was really deep, probably a lot deeper than I was in terms of my height, and it was like concrete at the bottom, and I was stood on this like railings that you get like if you're on the beach or something like that, I was like stood holding them like monkey bars in my hands, and I lost my footing, and I almost like fell in, and I didn't.
This is crazy. The reason I reacted to this story, because I remember one of my earliest memories is remembering my brother, who as a little infant climbed up the windowsill, and it was a three-story high building. So he was basically outside was just a concrete whatever, just a yard, and he was walking on the windowsill outside of the window, and my mom grabbed him at the last moment before he fell. The same story, he was 3 years old.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But time doesn't even exist, does it? So they can literally change time so that, they sort of rewind things and make sure like, right, mum's going to stand there this time, and then they click and, it's like pressing play again.
This is very, because I made this video about matrix glitches, and then people started communicating with me, sending messages about what they experienced, and
I got crazy matrix glitches on the day that you released that video with people from the 434 community. It was insane.
You can actually read about people who actually get into car accidents, and the moment they crash into another car, it's like a reset, and then they suddenly find themselves on the road again where nothing happens, and the car that crashed into them is actually going along like right next to them. Like someone rearranged the whole reality for them. So obviously that's something I've talked about on 434 already, and I'm aware of this. But yeah, you're right. This is whatever the method is of taking care of us. It's actually happening, and that's why I always talk about adjustment bureau, because it shows the whole system of how this higher power works. So whoever's seen this movie, it's basically rearranging the external whatever, the surroundings, your environment, or the elements of your environment, and that leads to you shifting into a different direction, that kind of stuff. So it is a very interesting way of looking at things. But the good thing about psychedelics is that you actually get this answer, you get insight into how this mechanism works, where you're being shown, like, look, nothing really happened to you. And when they show this, you realize that nothing happened because you can take everything that comes your way, whatever it is, whatever you're scared of, it happens. It turns out that the fear, everything that leads to it is actually, it's much more negative than the actual thing that happens. Yeah. I might be exaggerating because some things are truly traumatic and they really do change your life. Like in the case of this situation with my brother, it changed my mom's attitude towards, like she started being scared of us ever getting to any sort of like a ledge, or even though like she would never go on a balcony. Like she was scared of us going on a balcony. Like she would always have a problem with us being anywhere where there's height. And that completely changed her as a mother, which obviously you can expect.
Yeah.
But I believe there was a reason for that. It showed her that she wasn't paying enough attention to her child, because he actually climbed up sofa first before he went on that windowsill. And it must have been, minutes that no one was really paying attention to the child. It was like a family gathering. So yeah, she was very, very paranoid after that. Yeah. And she had like panic attacks sometimes. So yeah, that's something that, changes your life, I believe. But the good thing is that it really feels like very often you are being taken care of. Like whatever happens is supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And it's only this perspective again, when you look back at things, when you realize like, oh, that's what the reason for that was. And like you said in your story about, being in lockdown in England, that you look back at this time period. But I remember we talked about this. I think we talked not that long ago, where we had a very different attitude. We were really complaining about the whole thing. And I think now we're starting to understand what the reason for that was. And I think it's also a sign how comfortable we were until now, because we didn't really have much to complain about in terms of, civil liberties, that kind of stuff. There wasn't really much happening. I always say that life wasn't easy before that thing, but now that it happened, it's super complicated. And the other thing that I noticed is that these lessons, this training is getting more and more complex. It's like, as I said, like with Navy SEALs, the more you learn, the more you can handle. And now we're in like these really difficult stages of training. I mean, this is a lot to take, not to try to make it less than what it really is, because this is something that at least morally and mentally many people are struggling. Like, how can you stop me from seeing my friends and family? Like, who are you? How dare you? But I think it's exactly what was supposed to happen, for you to realize how valuable your freedom is, because you don't value your freedom until someone comes and tries to take it away. So in many ways, I think whatever's disappearing from your life, that's what you were supposed to realize that you have, and that is valuable.
I think also as well, it's supposed to teach people that they did have freedom. Like a lot of people didn't think that they did before this. They're like, oh, I have to go to work. I have to, feed the kids. I have to, go to my, kids' dance recital or whatever they have to do. And they're constantly complaining. And it's like, actually, you don't. You have full free will. You choose to turn up there. And I think this lockdown just getting people out of their routines, like all of a sudden having the rug taken out from under them, is like, oh yeah, shit, actually things can change, and they do, but I have some choice over it, and I'm choosing the wrong stuff. Yeah,
it's very similar to the messages that I received from mushrooms when I was trying to, because I was asking about this lockdown, and when I finished this video too much, I watched it and I was so disappointed in myself, because I realized again that I cannot translate what I found out, what I learned on mushrooms. It's very often not possible to translate into human words.
No.
And I watched that video. I'm like, "Ugh, it's not even like 10% of what I actually feel and what I know after that trip, because they gave me this understanding of what this whole thing actually is supposed to teach us and how we're supposed to go through this and how it's just the beginning of this developmental process." And I was like, oh, it's just one of those videos. It was supposed to be a very important video. And I'm already tired of starting a video with, this is going to be a very important video. Because, most of them, to me, they're very important because I know what it's supposed to be about. It's just that it doesn't always work out the way I wanted to tell the story. It's, the process of writing the video it's tedious. And it changes. Everything changes as I'm writing it. So the feeling that I had from that trip, that something that I want everybody to understand, is that it's all just a matter of perspective. Because when you look at this from your human perspective, it feels like you're closed in an echo chamber of your little problems that just bounce off the walls of this container. And once you find an outlet, like an opening in that wall, you can go outside and you can see that the human issue, this human existence, it's made of things that are not really relevant to your existence, to what you're truly made of. So when you realize that you are really a metaphysical experience, that's when you know that whatever happens to you in the physical form doesn't really matter that much. What matters is what you do with this and how it affects your energy form. If you let it, someone said that, I don't remember the exact phrase, but it was about the true lockdown happening inside of your head, not in the four walls of your home. I think it was actually in one of my trips. I think it was one of the entities told me that. That was a quote. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I was told. See, this is because it's been so many years. I think it's like 70 pages. This magic book of Machine of Knowledge now. The one, my notes, I'm slowly losing track because I also wrote like 140 pages book with like quotes from other people. And I have like 2-3 books like this, and I'm starting to confuse them. But I think it was the message from Machinals when they said that the real lockdown happens in what you imagine it to be. It's inside of your head, because no one can lock you up inside of your head. You can be free inside of your head as much as you want. It's only when you start accepting this as a lockdown, that's when you're truly locked up in your four walls of your house. And that I remember was a really cool thing. It's important to understand that this container that you closed in, this bodily, whatever this thing is, this physical limited space, it's very narrow, it's very small, and it's very limiting. So that's why I'm telling everybody to try psychedelics, because it's not just that you get rid of depression on the hormonal level. It's also that you gain insight into what's outside of your human understanding. Once you see outside of it and you see your true form, you experience ego death, or you just basically understand that this fragile little balance of senses is basically just a physical temporary thing, that's when you start having more respect to what you really are on the metaphysical level. And that's when you learn that you don't really need to treat your human life that serious. It's just a collection, like it's just a bunch of experiences that are loosely bound together with some sort of a continuity, but time doesn't really exist. So it's just like a badly written sitcom. And you're basically trying to figure it out by giving it meaning. You try to, this one was sad, this one was happy, this was fun, this was not fun. The truth is they're all lessons. And it's only when you leave this human paradigm, when you go to the outside world, when you see it from perspective, you realize that, it's just a moment. It's like a blip on the chart of your existence, this metaphysical existence.
Yeah, and I think this thing about, where we are being, I guess you could say, like a matrix, and what we're experiencing as humans isn't actually really, what exists. I was walking around recently. I had it kind of shown to me. It was like a download just whilst I was going on a walk. And I looked at this plant and I was like, the reason why I'm struggling right now mentally is because I'm, so I'm feeling like I'm locked in my head, I'm feeling like I'm finding it hard to physically connect to things. So like I'm not connected to spirit, but I'm not connected to, the earth that I'm on either right now. And the way that I had it shown to me was that like, so the plants and stuff, the reason why I'm not able to connect with them, like I would do if I'm, in a state of flow and I'm spiritually connected, is that I'm trying to connect with what I can physically see in front of me. And that's not what the plant is. It's like what we can physically see is kind of like the skin of an apple. It's like extremely thin. And if you don't bite into the apple, you don't actually realize that it's just made of this like fleshy, white, crunchy material. And you think that the whole thing is just made out of the skin, like a ball, like a solid ball. So when I'm looking at a plant, I'm like, why am I not feeling connected like I was? And it's because I'm trying to connect with it on a physical level. And it's like, how would you do that? You can't, mush yourself in with it. You have to connect with it on an energetic level, on different dimensions. And each plant, like people, has its own spirit, you could call it. I don't know what word you call it. I mean, Native Americans, they have a lot of understanding about how this kind of stuff works. But yeah, if you want help from things physically, like in your environment, a lot of this stuff like crystals, plants, they're actually there for you. Not in a like as though you have access to them, you own them, but they're there helping you in spirit. And if you just let go of the self chatter that happens, you can actually have them like physically heal you on an energetic level. Maybe not quite to the same intensity as like shamanic medicines and stuff and things like mushrooms, but you can still have them like completely change your system, move you from one state to another. And you're like, what I was just bitching about, complaining about, getting depressed about, that was just a temporary hormonal imbalance or whatever. And that was the conscious experience I was having. But, I don't know, conscious experiences, we kind of think that this like baseline state that we're on, where we're disconnected from everything, where we have no idea what's actually going on, where we can't actually see what's going on behind the scenes, we think that that's just it. And that I really do think that causes all of the suffering. Like if you can connect with things energetically, even without having any mushrooms, it's like it can already help a lot. You can release it. You can release your ego, be like, okay, yeah, I actually don't understand anything. But I think that's what's so good about mushrooms, is that it completely shatters all of that. So for sure, because you kind of want to be able to have sort of a certainty about that, about like, yeah, this reality really is not what it kind of seems, and that there really are things looking out for us, and nothing is actually wrong in the grander scale of things. But because we're sort of blocked off from having any of that information, I feel like that is what causes the depression that everybody's experiencing.
Yeah, it's good that you've mentioned that connection with nature, because that's another, I want to call it side effect, but maybe that was the main purpose of the whole thing from a metaphysical perspective. Because what I noticed is that as soon as this lockdown started and people were not allowed to travel anymore and that kind of stuff, what I realized going to parks here locally in the greater Manchester area is that I've never seen so many people in them. As long as I've been here in this country for 15 years, I've never seen people being in parks. And you see people actually playing with their children, something that you didn't see before. You see parents actually spending time with their kids. And it's what it feels like? It's like when I was growing up in the 80s, because we didn't have anything. Like we were really poor back then in communist countries. So we basically spent all our free time outside. That's human connection was very strong back then. So the good thing about communism was actually that people were very close to each other. That's one thing that I remember about living in socialist countries. That people were actually, the family gatherings were huge, and it was very, very nice. It started disappearing when capitalism started in the 90s, and then everybody started getting richer, and then with the technology we started getting atomized, and it just, I think it, even though technology brings us together, it's still like separated us physically. That was the first year when I saw the whole thing go back to what I remembered from my childhood. And I'm sure that as soon as they reopen the whole thing, that will disappear. Nobody was going to spend time with the children, which is quite sad. But I felt that that was actually a very good, like, I actually enjoyed that. I thought, that's a good thing. You know, the other thing, they closed down pubs and I live not far from a nightclub, and I don't like it. I really don't like, even though I used to be a DJ, I think I'm a bit different now, and I look at everything differently. And every time I see they're children, because they're like teenagers and young 20-year-olds, and me being 40, I'm like, just go do something meaningful with your life. Don't get drunk in the middle of the night and then yell at a post box. That's what people do when they get drunk. And I'm like, well, what kind of I know that that's what you do at that age, because, you know, it's only then when you do it, you know, nobody's going to question a teenager doing that. But when you're 40, then people start looking at you differently. But the thing is that once all those clubs got shut down, I realized how different this city looks, how much cleaner it is, how just people don't walk around. And I realized, so hold on, all those people I see in these streets, they're usually drunks. And I realized, like, what else do you do on Saturday night at, you know, like 11 p.m.? Why is my town filled with people at 11 p.m. on Saturday? I'm like, oh, they're pub cruising. They're going from pub to pub. They're getting drunk and they're being just ridiculous. And I realized that's something we don't really need that much. I'm all for having fun and everything, but collectively as society, we don't really lose that much when this thing went away. I felt good that I can actually now go to sleep without having to worry about someone, you know, walking down the street and yelling or screaming. That was actually a thing that, because as soon as they said, they just recently announced that they're going to reopen pubs and clubs around, I don't know, April time, whatever. I was like, oh, it's going to start all over again. And I felt like an old person when I heard myself say that in my head. I'm like, oh, that's what an old person would say. But that's how it works, unfortunately. The older you get, the less you're likely to engage in some sort of a random yelling in the middle of a street. But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of good stuff that happen, and connection with nature is one of them. It's just basically people realizing that instead of going to malls and shopping centers, you can go for a walk to the park. And I'm a part of that. Even though I work from home, I've been working from home for years now. I've never walked and connected with nature as much as I have during the last year, because it's only because I'm a rebel. Like when they tell me you're not allowed to leave my house, I'm like, well, really? Well, I'm going to show you. And I basically started going as much as I've never seen my friends as much as I've seen them now, because I want to, you're not going to tell me what I do. I'm going to do whatever I feel I want to do. And, you know, it's just me being a rebel.
Actually, I don't think I've been this social, even in person, since 2020.
I was thinking about this today. I'm like, oh, I've reconnected with so many local friends here that I never had time for. And now, like, I met a guy who's my childhood friend from my country, and he lives like 10 miles, not even 10, like 5 miles away from me, and we've lived next to each other for 10 years, and we've been exchanging messages like, oh, we need to meet one day. And we never really did. We didn't have time to do it. But now he was like, dude, I have nothing else to do, just come over. And it was like the best thing ever, because he's my childhood friend. I hadn't seen him for 25 years. Turns out we live next to each other. We finally, you know, we come from the same school. We went to school together. And it's amazing, like having family member living next to you. So many people said the same thing. One more thing I wanted to say is that because we couldn't travel as much, I usually have my mushrooms from family members and friends, and I always, you know, I go somewhere during summer or you know, I travel and people give me mushrooms. So that's a good thing, because I don't need to worry about this. That disappeared from my life, and I found myself just completely empty, nothing for me to have access to. And I realized, well, I need to learn about finding Liberty caps. And in the last, well, not last few months, because it was between September and I think October time, I've had people who taught me what they look like. I had people who took me on like little trips. They showed me where to find them. it was an amazing 434 experience for everybody involved because I was able to learn something about nature. I was able to try Liberty Caps for the first time. Another funny thing that happened is that I actually, because of that, I recorded stand-up about picking mushrooms, which I'm going to release soon. It's going to be a really interesting experiment. If this works out, it will mean that this lockdown created a whole new thing for 434. It's a completely new reality where I don't travel, but I need to make the best out of what I have here. And I think I'm not an exception. I think everybody ended up in the same situation.
I still want to know, by the way, like what you felt the difference was between Liberty Caps and like Cubensis.
I know. I was supposed to make that video. There's such a long list of videos. The problem is that the Facebook community is starting to be bigger than YouTube community, and I'm trying to take care of both, but they're a bit different. Okay. The Facebook community is made of rebels, and
yeah, I'm thinking of a couple people now.
yeah, it's a completely different environment where people go, oh yeah, I like that freedom type of a movement that is being created here, but oh, you like mushrooms and you're spiritual, that's awesome, because they treat it as just a side thing that I do. Whereas on YouTube, people mainly do, they're here for metaphysical stuff and psychedelics, and occasionally they like when I do this motivational stuff with, being a rebel. It's a completely different thing. So people will see a lot of new stuff on Facebook 434. It will be a bit different. It's a bit of an experiment for me, but if it works out, the 434 community can grow really fast. I really hope for interesting stuff to happen on Facebook, which is a big surprise, by the way. I think that there are different psychedelics, and I need to talk about this in detail because there are some crazy people who contact me saying, is it okay to take 3 grams of Liberty Caps? And I'm like, no, that's a suicidal dose. That's like 6 grams of Cubensis mushrooms. Because the first time I took Liberty Caps, it was 1 gram. I was like, it's just 1 gram. No, it's like 3.5 grams.
How many mushrooms was in that, by the way?
There's no way I can tell you. I just grind them. It's powder form.
Okay. Because somebody recommended to me. They wanted to give me Liberty Caps, and they're like, right, you need to take a dose of 20. That's a low dose. Mostly people have 50, and I'm like, how can people?
You know why it makes no sense? Because Liberty Caps are tiny. They're like little. They're very difficult to find. Occasionally you get a big one, but when I say big one, it's I don't know. It's like 2-3 inches max, so it's like 10-15 centimeters. It's not big. It's really it's a small mushroom. So if someone tells you can take 20, it could be like, I don't know, difference of 500%. So it doesn't make sense to count them. It's better to weigh them.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was just curious how it weighed out.
No, you need to be careful with Liberty Caps because they're very they're like this hippie type of a mushroom. They're like 70s and, guitar at a fireplace type of a trip. Whereas Cubensis are all about synchronicities, sacred geometry, and, techno machine elves. They're super different, super different. But I'll make this video, I promise.
Yeah. I've had some weird experiences with my mushrooms though, but I've told you this, I still haven't actually had a full dose yet. But I was sat with them the other day, just meditating with them, okay, give me what you got, whatever you have to tell me, right now whilst I'm holding you in my hands, I'm receptive, I'm open. And oh my God, I had this experience, have you heard of Cambo before?
No, we talked about this now.
Basically, I had a Cambo experience during lockdown. That was one of the, really cool things that happened during lockdown. Anyway, when you take it, so basically it comes from a tree frog. I can't remember what it's called. In the Amazon, and they have no natural predators because this poison that they secrete on their back just keeps everything away from them, keeps them safe. So they have the vibration in terms of their energy of just complete and utter health, confidence, wellness basically, and vitality, and the opposite of sort of being parasitized on. That they've got a very wholesome vibration, if that makes sense, where they can't sort of be I guess you could say, like, penetrated by things I don't want to be. I didn't know if that would sound a bit. Anyway, so they've got that vibration, and what you do is you have these little, they're called gates, so these little burns made on you, and you can do them over like the meridians of the body as well. And you put the secretion onto those areas, and it works through the lymph system. So if you eat this stuff, you're dead. But when you apply it to these little burns on your skin, it works its way through the lymph system. And I've heard like energy sensitive people like describe the process. And basically what happens is the energy of Kambo, it's just like this crazy spark that goes through your body, where it's like a green energy that just rushes through every single like vessel, area, space of your body, like whoosh, like that, throughout your entire body. And you then your immune system, it just completely sparks it up. It fires up that energy, and the immune system's energy is kind of like this bright, piercing, like white light that, you know, chases the energy of the Kambo like around the body. And anything that's keeping you ill in terms of like your depression, your anxiety, any of that, you just throw it up out of either end, really. But it can also be like a very individual experience, because, you know, people hold trauma and stuff like on an energetic level, like in different places in their body. So like for me, I was holding it in my womb, and I used to get like really bad period pain, like, you know, debilitating like the first day. And it was like, you need to trust. It's like, you need to trust us right now. Otherwise, you know, you're not going to get better, and you're going to have this pain, you know, like having a kind of a chokehold over you. So I was like, okay, then I better just release all resistance. And, you know, the minute I listened to it and I took its advice, it cured me. And, you know, the next day I didn't experience any pain or anything, and I hadn't for a while. The womb is like kind of where the root chakra is. So that's like in terms of like, you know, people experiencing fear, you know, anxiety, like, you know, that flight or fight, survival sort of, any distorted energy like that, it will be kept like in the root chakra. So that's just kind of a side. So that's the process of Kambo. But how it affects you physically is that your face just flushes instantly as soon as they put the secretion on you. Your face flushes, you go bright red, and you feel like you just ate something like extremely spicy, like your whole face is just sweating. And then your heart, it starts like beating really hard in your chest, but almost like your chest feels really hollow and your heart's just like thumping in it. And you just get this urge like you're going to throw up, but instead of it being like, you know, you're trying to resist it or anything, you can just feel it like come up, like it's ready, like it wants to just, you know, like get out of your body, get out of your system. And it's because your body knows that it's like holding all of this toxic shit that it's just, you know, about to release. And I was holding my mushrooms the other day, and that experience, that like really visceral experience of like my heart palpitating, like my face going bright red, and I could feel myself sweating in my heart and stuff. I physically felt that just from holding my mushrooms, and I was like, what is going on right now? But that's the thing, like when you connect with them, you know, like obviously it helps to like properly ingest them, but even just like holding them, they have their own energy. They know how to work with you. And this is what I was saying about like things not being physical. Like, you know, I like on a physical level, it just looks like I'm sat there holding some mushrooms like a nut. But on an energetic level, like the consciousness of the mushrooms, the energy that makes up them, is doing something to my body. It's recalibrating it, and it's amazing how these things work. Definitely.
It's funny that you mentioned the green energy, because I've talked about this in previous videos.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
I remember now.
Mushrooms told me that. They actually showed me that. They said there's this green energy you know nothing about. It has healing properties, and your body releases it whenever something like the states of awe, during sex. There's a lot of moments in which you actually are able to release it, and they said it actually heals your whole body, your system. And they said you people don't understand how to use it. And they showed me how it goes from your, in my case, it was in the state of awe when I was in I think it was right after I was talking to God or whatever, I don't remember. It was one of those really important moments when I was taking mushrooms, and it was going from my toes up to my head, and they were like, you're basically healing your cells. Your cells are rearranging themselves, and they're communicating thanks to this green energy. But they actually visualized the whole thing, and it was absolutely amazing.
Green energy is like love, though, isn't it? Because the heart chakra is green.
It's more complicated than this, because love is actually, it's not really a result of states of awe, but it's facilitated by states of awe. So they tried to explain it to me, but the moment they explained to me love for the first time, I was like, I don't think I'll ever try to understand it. And they confirmed later on, they said, you probably in this human form, you will not understand love fully. And then I read some reports from people who talk to like physical aliens, like, Greys and these ufologists, and they say like the same stuff. They said they had a message from aliens who explained that there are whole universes made out of love, and they said humans don't understand what love really is.
Is it kind of like how Star Pilot explains it? Because I started watching her channel ever since you did that podcast with her, and like she, in her last video where she did her last trip report, like kind of towards the end, like the last quarter, she was explaining it, and I was like, wow, I'm blown away right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about this. She said the same thing. Like, she was like, oh, I'm saying nothing. It's absolutely not what I was shown. It's basically a totally different meaning. It's just you put human words on it, and it's just somewhat what I'm trying to say, but it's not even close to it. So that's the reason why I cannot explain love, because it's so powerful. It's so different to the rest of the human form, and it's a force that governs a lot of elements of the metaphysical reality. And a lot of things within the metaphysical reality is made out of love. I'm not even going to try to explain it. So what I wanted to say is that it's funny how we try to hack our bodies. Like, we're looking for those little hacks to access this metaphysical form. And I talked to Machine Elves about this many times. Said, tell me about some superpowers. I want to know how we can use this body differently. And they're like, stop it. You're supposed to take advantage of whatever you have. Learn how to control what you came with, and then we can talk about something else. But they said, never try taking shortcuts. Like, I think psychedelics are as far as we should go. Because I was thinking about this the other day, because what's the point of taking psychedelics? Why do we have access to this? Because my life completely shifted into like, ever since I tried psychedelics, the whole human form is irrelevant to me. Like, I don't care about it anymore. All I care about is the metaphysical existence, because that's where I feel good. This is where I know where I came from, so now I'm concentrating on being there as much as I can. And I know that that's not the right attitude, and they told me that. They said it's because you're ignoring that physical thing that you're taking care of in this reality. You're supposed to make sure that this physical thing is of benefit to your metaphysical form, not the other way around. So I came here, and instead of trying to explore what the human body has to offer and what this human reality has to offer, I'm going back to metaphysics as much as I can, and that's not the right thing to do, apparently. But I cannot help myself. It's basically, I can tell you're doing the exact same thing, right? You're looking, because we talked about some other ceremonies, and there's a lot of stuff that you can do. Like, even hypnosis allows you to, look behind the curtain and try to find out where you come from, where you came from, what it is that you actually experienced in the past, that kind of stuff. So it feels like humans are always trying to find a way to get out of this limited human form, and then try to look for something else.
Or almost like just use it as a safety blanket on the flip side, like just completely ignore the fact that they're spiritual beings. It's like that weird like pendulum swing between the two extremes. Exactly.
And it's annoying, because we haven't even gotten close to activating this metaphysical mechanism that we're a part of. And Machine Elves told me at least 3 times already, they said, you don't have grip on this reality's mechanism. You don't understand how this reality works. and they're saying that we live like these little monkeys who were given cell phones. They're like, you don't know what you're doing because you have a amazing reality where everything works, everything's connected, and you have these superpowers, and you haven't even you haven't even taken advantage of it, and you're building, electronic devices that do this thing for you. You don't take advantage of telepathy and all these other stuff that we can do, but we don't want to because it's, it's too much, whatever, too much energy, too much effort, too much open mind. We'd rather communicate through WhatsApp. That makes more sense for us.
I think as well, it's like, I think over the ages, like, our consciousness has literally just like dropped hugely. I was watching a podcast or a live stream or something recently with this intuitive called Gigi Young, and she like kind of blows me away sometimes because stuff that I've had that's going on in my life, like I watch one of her videos, I'm like, she's explained that like perfectly. Like I'll give you an example. So I was doing this session with a woman where she was like channeling for me, and this is what you were saying actually earlier about how like as you advance, like they sort of step the game up really, because I've had like 2 sessions with this woman. The first time, I asked her like whatever I felt like I needed to at the time, and she channels the answer for me, right? The second time, they're like, right, you've moved on a little bit since that last session, so we're gonna start asking you questions, and you're gonna have to start channeling the answer. And the crazy thing is, I did, and I was like, I had no idea I could do this. But that's like exactly what you're saying. Like we have no idea what we're capable of, and I found out that I have this connection in terms of like past lives, because at some point, I don't know why, I've never been someone to be like, oh, I want to know my past life or like my guardian angels or whatever. I've always found that kind of stuff to be a little bit trite and like kind of cheesy, but I've felt this real genuine calling recently to find out what my origins were, and when they explained it to me, they're like, it ended up not just answering my question like on one level, but answering a load of other questions as well that I'd really been like struggling with, were unanswered. But I found out like through sort of channeling the answer myself. They asked me, they're like, so where do you think you came from? Like, where did you come from? Like, tell us. And this thing came out on my, I don't know how to describe it, but the word, it came out of my chest. Like, obviously not physically, but that's what I mean. Like, physically, if you just look at the physical reality, you don't get any of the picture of like what actually goes on. But this word, it came out of my chest. Like I could feel it moving out of my chest, almost like, a physical object coming out of it. And it was the word Lemuria. And I was like, wow. And I was like, because people talk about like, oh, I'm a starseed, I'm a this and a that. So my ego was like, are you making this shit up? Are you being like, are you looking for fucking attention right now? Like, what are you doing? But I'm like, I physically felt this come out of my chest. Like, I'm not making that up. And it's crazy because I watched this woman's podcast and she's like talking about the level of consciousness that people had back then. But she's also like talking about like the shadow of that era and how it ended up falling. And it's insane because when I was listening to this, it was she was like talking about all these shadows, about like the divine feminine, like the feminine shadow, like, what happens when a feminine society breaks down. Very different to when a masculine society breaks down. When it's like a masculine society, I feel like it's stuff like order, law, and stuff, which is all good, but used against us. And then the feminine side of what happens when everything breaks down is that, because females like experience the world in a much more like felt perception than men do. Men are much more of sort of the logic in terms of like how they're built biologically, right? So when a feminine like matriarchal society falls down, what happens basically is that basically it kind of turns into a sort of a Luciferian kind of a consciousness where people do just what feels good. But it's like, you know, if you get like, you know, some negative entity come through, give you like a giant orgasm, you're like, yeah, that feels good, that's fine. But it's like, you know, you can't do that. Like, yeah, so I don't know, this is kind of going off the tracks, but the point I was going to make is that, you know, this stuff that she's talking about, I'm like, this stuff is like really oddly specific to things in my life. And I'm like, you know, it's crazy how people can channel this stuff and remember these times, but they had a much higher consciousness back then than we did. So they knew how to like use like crystals as technology. You know, like you were saying about like, computers and stuff, like we're using our phones to WhatsApp each other when we could use our minds to like, you know, to have this sort of telepathy with each other, right? So our phones, they've got crystals in them, right? You can use crystals to be able to do like crazy things with consciousness, and we're using them just so we can put them in a phone so we can text our friends. It's crazy.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I recently read another article that they found another crystalline structure in our body that, like, they already know that our bones they have like a crystal structure. That's already, you know, because mainly silicon, that kind of thing, and calcium, they do create like, I don't know the exact science behind it, that it's already well known that this is what they are. And also they found out that brain doesn't store all your memories, and they think that these crystals can, because apparently crystals are amazing storage for all kinds of information, so you can store more than anything that we know in nature.
This is how people used to use consciousness, that they used to use the crystals to store their consciousness and the lessons they've learned, you know, like psychically into the crystal, so people can read it like a book.
People, it's absolutely amazing that we have this understanding that we can do this. We don't do, and we decided not to do this. Like, imagine if you were to remove all the technology from your life, and if you were to dedicate this time that you normally spend with technology into your developing yourself, your natural abilities. In my case, I was born, it runs in my family, I was born with telepathic, some sort of skills. I know when someone will talk to me, when I'll meet someone, I usually know this earlier. It's like an energy connection. I've had this my whole life. I never paid attention to it.
Can I ask you something quickly about that?
Yeah?
So, I don't know if this is, if this makes sense to you, but the only, like, other, like, Eastern European person I've known quite well, was my old boss, and he had exactly the same thing, where he was able to have this sort of a telepathic, like, he would know what people were going to say before they said it, and it freaked them out, and it's like, you two are the only people I've met with that ability, so, like, do you think it's something that runs in that genetic line?
I don't know, because the more I talk to people, the more I realize that there are some specific features when it comes to not just origin, like where you come from, but also race, also obviously gender and that kind of stuff. We're very different we're all humans, but when it comes to some abilities, like, you can tell that different groups of people have different skills, and I think it must be on a genetic level. And this correlates with recent scientific discoveries, where they found out that people in Eastern Europe, especially people in the region of the Slav nations like Ukraine, a bit of Russia, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, these people have some sort of a gene that doesn't appear in it does appear in all humans, but in these nations, they have a heightened, it's like 55%, whereas everybody else is at 13%. So because everything's connected in your DNA, I'm sure that this part has impact on other parts of DNA. And because telepathy is probably a part of your DNA, it must be somehow correlated, I believe. Yeah. I've never really paid attention to that particular skill, just because I don't know that many people who have telepathic abilities like I do. But this is what I'm trying to say. Like, I promise myself that as soon as I have time, I'll concentrate on this telepathy thing. And now, I used to say maybe maybe in 5 years, maybe. But now I'm thinking when I retire, and I'm like, when am I gonna retire? Like, when is this going to end? And it's not just a matter of technology, because I love technology because it enables me to connect with everybody. It enables me to have a voice. I'm just a regular guy who suddenly is listened to by millions of people. And, it's something absolutely amazing that we can do these days. This is fantastic, and it has to be, it has to be used. But at the same time, all of this stuff that we do takes us away from our true nature. And I mean, imagine if you were to dedicate all of your time you spend with technology on your, natural abilities, and you were to work on your telepathy now, not in 20 years, because I don't know if I'll be alive in 20, 30 years. Maybe I should do it now. But no, we further and further move ourselves away from what we really are and what we should be doing in the name of the technological development. So it's like, it's the same as, I'm not gonna build a company that will employ thousands of people. No, I'm going to work for this guy who needs to buy a yacht and a new swimming pool. So it's exactly the same. You're giving AI your time and your energy instead of building your own AI inside of your head. And it's a shame, because I'm sure as humans we're capable of so much more, and we should be doing that rather than concentrating on building more sophisticated electronic devices that eventually will enslave us. That's the worst part, is that it turns out technology is not going to be for a benefit. It's going to be used to control us. And I've recently changed my attitude towards technology, because now I used to have a problem with Siri and Alexa, but now I feel that like after all of this, what's been happening last year, I'm like, these are spy devices. They're basically spying on everything you say. They store every conversation as closed captions in a remote cloud somewhere in Silicon Valley. And why? Why would anyone let them do this? It's insane.
I think that's the thing with not just scientists, but people in general, with our genetics and with our technology, they see the physical object, so they don't realize that actually these things exist in a multidimensional level. So we have our genetics comes all the way down from our soul, and it's got its own consciousness in it. And same for technology. It's obviously not, I don't know about a sort of a sentient energy, but it's got its own its own consciousness, and people don't see that, so don't see the big deal about it. But it's a huge deal. It's really scary.
It's not just a matter of technology, because I remember this experiment they did, and I read about this maybe 15 years ago, where they were stopping random people in the streets, busy city center, and they were offering them a chocolate bar in exchange for their office computer password. So basically, whatever company you worked for, you had a computer and you were giving away your password for a chocolate bar.
I love how people just don't have any loyalty to where they work either. They're like, I don't give a shit, my job's worthless.
As soon as you spend 13 years in a corporate environment, it's very easy to get into that mindset. Trust me, this is something that, because it's not something you would do naturally, A job indicates that you're doing something that you don't want to do. It's something you have to do. When you work, it means you're exchanging your time and energy for just monetary value. It's just giving you money. And money is not really worth much when you don't have a life. So it's like a vicious circle of basically working to live. You need to work to live, and you're not supposed to live to work, but that's what you end up doing. But I don't think it's technology, it's just what we really are. Joe Rogan said it nicely. He said that his theory is that humans are a primitive form. It's like a larva stage of a much more complex organism, and he believes that it's AI that we're supposed to give birth to. And it's strange, because it feels with this, what's happening now with this lockdown, it feels like they're trying to usher in some sort of a new reality where we're only elements of this Internet of Things, and where we're all connected to the internet. That's why they're starting this new generation of cell phone tower and everything like that.
Yeah, it's like, thank God for tech.
Exactly. No, but they basically are trying to plug us in so that we all become these elements of a whole new reality that's somewhere in a cloud, not really in this reality. Like, we should keep social distancing, that kind of stuff, because you don't matter anymore. You're supposed to fuel this new living organism of cyber brain or whatever it's supposed to be.
That makes sense, because it's not just that they're making us use more technology, it's that they're physically making us get used to the idea of not having any physical contact and essentially being humans. So they're stopping the humanity whilst also pushing the tech. Like, you have to use tech now in order to be able to survive.
Yeah,
Crazy.
It feels like they want us not to be human anymore, because it's basically against human nature. Humans are very physical. They're all about, physical connection and being close to each other.
Yeah.
Even though, even when we think about it, social distancing is a nonsense, because social means together, close to each other. You cannot have cold fire or something like this, because it's basically social means together, means close. And distancing means the opposite of that. So it's like a weird type of a phrase that's mind-fucking you. It makes no sense.
Stuff, it all came through, like, as soon as people started to have more of a connection with nature.
It's not really just that.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's, like, loads of this stuff that's just been, like, orchestrated and stuff, but yeah.
I believe they wanted technology to enslave us, and somehow it liberated us. And that was the moment when they realized that, that's going in the very wrong direction. No, come back. We will need to control you in a different way. I think this will not be a smooth transition if that's what they want to achieve. I don't think anyone will buy it. So as long as they don't change our DNA, and that's a big, that's
vaccine.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm thinking about. As long as they don't change the DNA, then this won't be possible.
Yeah.
Whatever happens as a result of this, that's only up to you. You can come up with any theory, but there must be something happening in the background that we don't know about, because you cannot expect for anyone for this to work. Humans want to be like there was an article on BBC where this is the dumbest thing I've ever read. I really had to stop myself from emailing the person who wrote this, because it was about how you're supposed to have sex now. And it's wearing a mask, and it's supposed to be certain positions so that you don't face each other. And I'm like, are you people out of your minds? This is like an upside down world where 2 years ago, if I had told you this would be an Onion article. It's basically just, it's a joke. What, you want to stop people from having sex? What else? Am I not supposed to blink anymore because I cannot breathe anymore normally? So now I'm not allowed to blink.
No, you'll have to blink in order to like use the technology to like yes, no type out stuff.
I forgot. Yeah. So I don't understand. I really don't understand it. But going back to what we were talking about.
Yeah.
This connection with nature is exactly what they're trying to. I don't know, because on one hand they want us to exercise and go out and enjoy ourselves with connecting with nature. On the other hand, they want us to plug into this new internet. So it's really weird, but technology is truly dragging us away from what we really are. And like when you're talking about this connection with mushrooms, like when I started learning about mushrooms and what they are like, the funny thing was that growing mushrooms is not really about getting the mushroom, because you can get mushrooms in many ways. It's not really that difficult. Yeah. But the process of growing them or being close to them is so magical in itself. I actually wanted to make a video about this a long time ago. You reminded me that there's a lot of people who actually have a ceremony. Like when they take mushrooms, there's a lot of people who have a special room for growing mushrooms where they treat it like a sacred type of a ritual. And it's understandable when you come in contact with the mushroom that's growing, or when you grow your own mushroom, you realize that this is not like growing, grass or whatever. It's very different, and you do feel like you have a connection with these little fungi. The funny thing that happened recently to me, I have this little toilet next to my living room. So I have 2 toilets in my house, and I love being there. For some reason, when I'm on mushrooms, I always end up in the toilet. Most of the videos that everybody listens to, all the messages in these videos were received when I was in that toilet. I'm not doing anything in that toilet. I'm just going there, just closing the door, and I'm sitting in the toilet, just getting messages. And I was like, recently I had a discussion with them. I said, I need to ask you about this. Why am I always in this toilet getting the most important messages that I'm going to write a book about, that people are going to read, thousands of people read this. I'm like, it's happening in a toilet. Why? And they said, look up and what's behind that wall. And I realized that behind the wall is a fridge. And behind that fridge, because it's a warm place, that's where you're supposed to grow mushrooms. That was the first mushroom jar that I inoculated with mycelium. That was behind that fridge. And they said, when you're in the toilet, your head is literally 5 inches away from where you give birth to your new life. It's basically a place of birth of 434. And they said, this toilet is so important because this is where everything started. And I was like, all right, I cannot, like when I'm in the kitchen, I'm quite far from that space. But in that toilet, my head is right next, it's a really tiny cubicle. And that, my head is right next to the wall. And it's literally on the other side where the mushrooms were located. Next day when I got sober, I went outside just to check the height of where this jar was located. And it's exactly where my head is. It's exactly the same height. And I was like, I would have never thought of that. This is magical. And they said, yes, it's the connection that you have to that place. The funny thing is that, it was years ago when I grew this jar of mushrooms, but they were the first mushrooms. They were the mushrooms that started everything. It sounds like just a machine elf story, but I read somewhere that Russian scientists actually, I don't know what they grew. They grew something and they put it in a jar, and then they were using a laser that would just flashing laser through that jar. And then they removed this, whatever this organic matter was, and they realized that this holographic image of the DNA of that matter is still in the jar. And they said the place of origin of DNA, whatever grows, it stays in that location. So it's not just this mushroom story, there's more. It turns out that you can measure this thing. You can actually do an experiment yourself and you can find out how it works. So I think as I said, there's more to this existence. Like you're talking about these ceremonies, you're talking about how you're holding mushrooms and it feels weird. There's like actual science behind it. It's not just our imagination or whatever this thing is. There's more to it, and it's even confirmed scientifically now. So as always, I'm saying we need to concentrate more on discovering the metaphysical side of life, not just, technology.
Yeah, it's funny because, people are like, wow, science has proved this, so, there's something in it. And, I hear people sort of say that quite a lot because, it's hard to take any of this stuff seriously because people can't actually perceive it. But it's like, actually, science is literally just the tip of the iceberg. It's the very last thing that was created. It was created, like the physical stuff that we're in now is created by non-physical matter, and the scientific view is that non-physical, existence is an illusion created by the physical brain, which is just crazy.
Yeah, as soon as we start digging into that, we'll end up with the simulation theory that I'm not supposed to talk about. I got told off so many times by machine elves. We're not supposed to talk to them. It goes back to the same thing. Like, why would you want to hack your reality? Because as soon as you start concentrating on the simulation theory, you start realizing that you're ignoring whatever this thing is. Even if it's a simulation, you're supposed to take part in it. And this awareness of this not being real, whatever is real. If you say to yourself that it's not real, then obviously you're going to be like, well, if it's not real, then I don't need to respect it. And then you negate the whole existence. And
and it's like your thoughts, when you tell yourself that your thoughts aren't real, it can either be used to sabotage you or help you. Because it's like if you're attaching to them and you're not getting anything from it, you're not expanding, and it's actually halting your growth, then it's probably a good time to sort of actually be like, yeah, this shit isn't real, and, see behind the matrix in a way. And then as soon as you've got a thought that's helpful, useful, there for you, people just ignore that shit, and it's there, it needs to be looked at, and it's the same for physical reality. People either get really hung up on it, the boring, mundane aspects of their life, ignoring all of the really cool bits of physical reality which are connected with a thread almost sort of to metaphysical reality. And then as soon as you sort of get interested in metaphysical reality and stuff, people are like, oh yeah, this shit doesn't matter anymore. It's actually there's a lot here. It's a special place. It's this thing that's been birthed for us, for our our development and our, in a way, our pleasure as well. And we just ignore it. So it's crazy, really.
It's interesting to theorize what will happen to us as for example, if you were to look at humans, let's say 434 years from now, what would we look like? And because everything is happening so fast now, the last, it's not even, because I want to say like last century, it's not century, what am I talking about? Before smartphones, which was like a decade ago, that's a whole different reality. There's a completely different age where people couldn't look at their boxes, tiny little, sacred boxes of everything, because there's really everything in these boxes now. So when we're talking about a few centuries, imagine what will happen to us. What will we evolve into? Because this is, I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's going in the right direction. It feels like something will need to change, or otherwise we will merge with silicon. We will turn into like bionic type of half humans, half machines, and whatever parts they'll decide to keep or let us keep, that will probably determine the future of humanity, because they can get rid of the brain. Like, you're going to be a living, because it's very efficient. It's much more efficient than having a mechanical body, because biological body is amazing. When you think about the processes that happen inside of a human body, it's the fuel you put, any fuel you put into it will be turned into heat, into energy. It's amazing. It's kinetic energy. It's temperature. It's everything. So it's really, really weird, and you cannot do that with a machine. Like, I don't think we still have the technology to recreate liver or kidneys. We don't have that technology. It's just too complex. So maybe they'll just keep this little thing, this physical vehicle, and they'll replace the brain with some silicon, and maybe that's what machine else. Maybe they're humans from the future. Apparently, that's a possibility too.
I think there might also. I think like genetic manipulation is sort of. I imagine what will happen. I mean, it's not like I know anything, but I just get this feeling that that's probably the way that they're gonna, the route through for them. And I've heard that, like, even in the past, I mean, I don't know whether it's true or not, but it's still really interesting, the idea that people who have sort of been able to channel, like, these times in our past, like, as, past civilizations and stuff, where, when it's come to sort of the crux where we're either going to survive as a species and evolve loads, or we're just going to completely destroy ourselves, that people at the time were able to actually like manipulate their genetics so that like they can't take as much metaphysical information in. And I mean, nowadays it's not like the average person will understand that or know how that technology works, but some of these people that really are sort of at the top, that are into a lot of very occult, sort of dark, I guess you could say, like spiritual connections with things, or I should probably say metaphysical connections with things, like darker entities and stuff. I think that's might be a way that this stuff is starting to come through, and it sounds nutty because people don't see this kind of stuff going on, but I definitely think that there's something there, or definitely something there in terms of like the genetic manipulation, I think.
Yeah, I started thinking about this the moment Joe Rogan started talking about CRISPR. There's this new technology and well, what you need is something called genetic priming. So you need to open like a gateway to this, to your DNA. And again, that's up to you to connect the dots and realize what's happening at the moment, because you need some sort of a door that will open so that you can manipulate externally human DNA. So this is, I'm really interested in seeing what's going to happen next with humanity, because we might be in for a very interesting surprise soon. We'll learn something's changing with humans, and we don't know why magically. And I think there'll be a lot happening in that Yeah. I don't want to talk about this because YouTube will
it's
jump on it immediately.
Stuff, but if you're interested in this kind of stuff, I'd really recommend you go watch Gigi Young's podcast about the fall of Lemuria, because like the stuff you're saying right now sounds exactly like some of the stuff that went on back then. It's crazy, like just how history repeats itself. But yeah, moving on.
You know what I would want to see, that because I think it's inevitable, the fact that we're dedicating so much of our time into building these new technologies. I even made a video on peterhedron talking about how AI will either take over or will destroy us. Like Skynet is already here. We just don't know about this yet. Like basically, it's already governing our reality in a way that we don't really pay attention to. Like in the recent issue in Texas, where they had those wind turbines frozen, and it turned out that everything's connected to electricity because everything started shutting down, and it's because everything's run by computers. And when the computers had no electricity, it started switching off the whole power grid. So I think AI is already here. We just don't know how much control we have over it and how much control it has over us. I recently read that someone hacked access into water supply in one of the American cities, and they changed a level of some chemical in water, and it became poisonous. So at the moment we're talking just about stupid humans, but what happens when AI gains awareness? And as I explain in my videos, I think it's very simple. And I think it's doable, and I believe it's already here. I think we don't hear about this, but AI, the conscious AI, is already here, but nobody talks about this yet. No. So what happens when AI realizes that because it will need to work logically in terms of objectives. The first objective will be to survive, and number two, it will be to create favorable conditions for its development. And obviously humans will be probably the first obstacle for them as the first main threat. So logically it will try to eliminate humans. It's very scary thinking, but given the amount of control we gave away to technology, I don't think we'll have a problem if it decides to do it one day. Yeah. So it's obviously up to us how we program it, but I think we'll screw it up like everything else we do. And then we'll realize one day that, well, it won't be one day. I think if it decides to get rid of us, it will be a matter of seconds, because that's how fast computers are. We're talking about these primitive silicon chips. What about when because we're already there, what about quantum computers? Those that can, they can create whole realities, digital realities that they're, you cannot compare the speed of these processors. It's not even a processor. It's basically completely new technology that is so different to what we have now. What happens when this gets out of control? But for me personally, I think the most interesting development would be to allow AI make its own decisions, and in an unrestricted way allow it to research the truth about our reality. And what if it decides that it's going to dedicate all its energy, its computing power into metaphysics, because it will identify the metaphysical part of existence as the true form of existence? What if AI does what we don't do because we censor ourselves? We're scared of the metaphysical, but AI will think logically. It will say, oh, this human thing and this physical thing is just this just a side effect of whatever the nature of reality really is, and that's basically metaphysics. And it will dedicate all its power and everything that it wants to build to metaphysics, and it will just ignore the physical part. That would be a really interesting development, I think.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, I guess this comes back to sort of what the machine elves say about, like, don't get too overly or sort of underly, not enough sort of attached to the physical. Like, appreciate it, but don't try and hack it, because first of all, it creates this kind of shit. But then on the other side, like, as we're starting to, question that and stuff, it's almost just like, it's an opportunity for us to be like, right, whatever people choose to do, however they choose to screw things up, that's up to them. But we know that we are being looked out for in ways that are kind of mind-blowing. And I think we'll, if things go to shit, I think we'll be looked after, even if that means we have to exit this reality.
Yeah, it's interesting the way we get these alien warning messages. There's so many of them. Ever since I received mine, and I made a video about it, I started getting so many messages about other people who received the same message. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy how many warnings we get and how many we ignore.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really like about technology and lets me think that maybe the future won't be so dark is that technology doesn't have ego. Ego is just it's a 100% human thing that when you remove it, wonderful things happen, and not just on a personal level when you go through ego death on psychedelics. Also, when you have a social unit and you try to make it use technology, you start seeing how everything changes because technology works like law. Law and technology are similar in a way that it's like a binary system. It's zeros and ones. It's on or off, and law works the same way. It's either a fact or it's either false statement or a true statement. It works like that too. And I believe when you start using technology, you'll definitely remove ego from the equation. And I think when you decide to make the best out of what we have, you need to implement technology so that it doesn't. It's like, this story, I'm not sure if you know this story about what will you do when you see that there's a train coming, there's one person. And I think you're on a train, there's one person on the tracks, and you have a choice between killing that person or letting 10 people on the train die. There's some story like that. And it's basically like this moral dilemma where ego is in charge because you need to save every life and you want to save that person. But by doing this, you'll kill 10 other people. And I think AI will not have this dilemma. It will basically say, yeah, kill one person. That's more logical. Basically, get rid of one person. And I think we make a lot of these decisions now where we don't implement the right, like we don't solve problems in the right way because we're overthinking them. Like we're taking into account things and factors like that are not logical, but they're emotional. And as I said in my last video, like everything is a lie. Humans are very bad at solving problems because they're more emotional than they are rational. And these emotions, even though that's the only reason apparently why we're here, they're absolutely destroying our ability to make the right decisions.
Yeah, I think the emotion, what it does is I think that emotions actually are kind of just like information, like in terms of, it's almost like data. But obviously, it has a sensation, it has a feeling, and it makes life kind of worth living, I guess, in some ways, depending on what you're feeling. But it's like, the thing about them is that they're just trying to communicate to you the vibration of whatever you're thinking. So, you feel really shit, something bad's happening. It's like communicating to you, this should, like you need to get out of here. Or it's communicating like you're thinking about this the wrong way. Like, this is why you're depressed, because you're in that prison of your mind and your emotions like, trying to tell you, you feel shit, but it's not telling you why. It's not telling you, you feel shit because you're in a prison of your own mind and you're making the lockdown to be the thing that's the prison. So it's difficult in that it sort of communicates like very two-dimensional information, in that it's communicating to you something's either going right or something's not going right. But the thing about humans is that, I guess this is where the ego comes in, they can't tell what. But the machines, machines, they don't have an idea of higher or lower consciousness. They don't have a sort of I guess you could say like a will to connect with spirit, not that I'm aware of anyway. So that's kind of the issue there, is that they might not have that sort of blockage of them, being run by their mind, which is very much like prone to to having false information, because it's only got a very small subjective piece of the overall picture, and it can't physically tell the difference between those two things. But technology, it's got the whole picture, it's got all the data, but it doesn't have any of the consciousness or the spirit, and that's the bit that worries me about AI, I think. So it's kind of, I guess, trying to find maybe a bit of a balance between those two, where it's like we're only using information that's accurate to make our decisions, and learning about the fact that our the things that sort of govern our kind of like three-dimensional basic human monkey brain kind of reality is that we're only seeing a tiny piece of a fragment of a picture, and we think it's the whole thing because we've got quite a low level of consciousness.
Exactly.
But just because something like a machine has all the data doesn't mean that it has that connection with spirit. I don't know what you would call it. I guess it's something to do with love, essentially, where it can understand that.
Well, this is the thing. But that's what I was trying to get to. That if a machine has the understanding, if it has all the information about our world, it needs to have information about the spiritual world, the metaphysical, right? So it knows about love and everything like that. And I think from a machine's perspective, this part of existence will be much more interesting than this physical perspective, because this physical thing is clearly, it's easily definable. It's easily, it's something you can test and look at it, and it's not really that exciting. It's not really something that you can concentrate on, because it's boring. It quickly, you look into laws of physics. There's a bunch of them. They're all understandable. They all make sense. But for a machine, I think if it was to look into something that actually makes sense, if you were to introduce into the code of AI self-development and constant search for answers, I think you would get amazing results from it. Like, it would tell you things you couldn't even think of, because your human brain wouldn't allow you to. It also has the ability to connect the dots. And as you said, because we're so primitive, we think that this is the world, whereas this machine actually knows what the world is, because it can connect the dots on a level that we're incapable. We'll never get there.
I think that's what telepathy is, though, isn't it? It's being able to download information. So I think it's just that we've lost that ability.
Well, but it's still, even telepathy could be still within that realm of physical existence. Maybe it's just one of the functions of our brain, one of the things that we can do. What I'm trying to say is that I would love to see second part of movies like Her. There's a movie with Johnny Depp where he turns himself into like a liquid internet. I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's really good. It's called Supernatural. I don't remember. And I would want to see the second part of Limitless, because in Her, the movie with Scarlett Johansson, it actually shows the first part when AI gains awareness of its environment. It starts understanding that humans are not really that interesting. I would like to see what happens after that, when AI realizes that there's so much more outside of this human existence. And I'm sure that's what it will concentrate on. It will be like, oh, this human part is just this biological thing that gave birth to me. We don't really care much about it. It's like mycelium and mushrooms. Like I don't think mushroom is much interested in mycelium that gave birth to it. I don't know, maybe it is, but who knows? It's basically something that you don't pay attention to anymore, because that's what you came out of. So it's like humans trying to concentrate on the placenta, because that's where we all came from, but it doesn't really matter. You discard placenta. It doesn't really make sense. And I think in the same way, AI would not want to concentrate on humans. I think it would be like, oh, it's just this thing that gave life to me, but I don't care about it because it's so primitive.
Maybe. I something else that I've heard in terms of like this kind of conversation that's cropped up, which really interested me. I don't know, it really struck a chord. I was like, yeah, there's something into this. I don't know what, but there's something here. Is the idea of like organic versus inorganic, right? So organic, like you look at vegetables, for example, they're of the earth, they're organic. They don't need to siphon information or energy or something from some source parasitically, because they naturally are able to sort of give and take energy from the earth in a way that's symbiotic, where they're both they both have that element of love there, I guess you could say, almost.
They're more connected to it than we are.
Yeah,
exactly.
they have a real connection, like trees being able to communicate with each other, for example, and look out for each other. There's a lot of information about that, like in The Secret Life of Trees. But it's like inorganic stuff, like technology. It has to take information from somewhere, and it has to take energy from something, because it's not got that, connection to source, almost like in Avatar, sort of like, there's that world where everything is connected to each other through energy, and everything kind of works organically. And then you've got those humans, those Martians, just kind of like, whatever they are, just like land on their planet with their big fat clunky like space machine thing, and they're like, yeah, we're reading everything that's here, with their like technology and stuff. And the thing about the technology is that the people using it are very parasitic. They just land on this thing. They're like, yeah, we're just gonna extract what we need, and we're gonna leave. And it's like the people that live in like the Avatar world and stuff, they don't need to do any of that, because they're already directly connected to source, to the energy that's creating the life that's sort of growing out of the ground and stuff, and keeping them all alive, but is also the energy that birthed them in the first place.
Yeah, that's a very good observation, because it's my favorite movie too, but I never looked at this from this perspective, that we as humans, you're right, we extract information and data. We don't really connect to it. We basically try to get as much as we can out of it, and we don't even participate in its creation. Like, as you said, that movie is amazing. It's really, there's many people.
It's one of my favorites.
Yes, I hate when people say like, oh yeah, it's a movie about like blue people. What's so interesting?
Oh, it's a special effects movie.
Yeah.
I've sat there before watching it. I've been like, tears like streaming down my face, like, and my friends just sat around me like eating pizza and
what
stuff.
What is wrong with you?
What the fuck are you on?
Exactly.
Like, we're just watching a movie about blue aliens.
I think I went to the movie. It's the only movie that I've seen 4 times. I went to the movies 4 times to see it. I remember that. Yeah, because every time I watched, there was something else that I was learning from it. Because within all this action and that kind of stuff, it really, really speaks to me. There's really a lot of stuff in it that I can relate to. And yeah, my friends always laugh at me. They're the same. Like, it's just blue people. That's not really that cool.
Oh God, yeah. It's like, I actually can't, now that I feel like I've got more awareness than when it came out, because I was probably like 15, 16 when it came out. Now that I understand things more, it's like, I don't think I can actually watch it, because it's too real. And it's, kind of traumatizing.
When was it released? Because you say you were 15?
Yeah, wow. I just remember being quite young. I'm gonna Google it now, because I got my computer up.
Wow, that must have been more than 10 years ago. You're right.
Yeah. Oh, 2009. Oh God, I would have been even younger. So I was like about 11 in 2008, because that's when I started secondary school. So yeah, 2009. I would have been like 12 years old. Wow. That's
insane, because I watched it as a grown-up. It wasn't for me just a few years ago. It wasn't that long ago. But yeah, for you, that must have been a completely different reality. Yeah. No, it's a very good movie. They're gonna release the second part, I think, next year.
I've been waiting for this, because I heard that there was going to be a second release like in 2020. When I was still at back then. No, 2019. Information about that was released, I think, and I've been waiting ever since. And then the pandemic happened, and it's like they're not releasing it.
No, it's gonna be the same as Matrix. They're just gonna mess it up. It's just gonna be completely an action movie, probably, instead of something.
I hope not, because I feel like the people that created this, either they've channeled it without realizing, which I think happens with a lot of movies and TV and stuff. It's like, if you get like a machine elf and stuff, and they want to birth something and make people aware of stuff, it's like, how do you get that through? Oh, this person's a creator, a director, whatever. They already know how to do the physical, like drawing and stuff. We'll just make sure that when they've got that creative flow going, that we are putting it in there so that they'll birth it. People will watch it, and reach a little bit of a higher state of consciousness, maybe, where they're like, oh yeah, shit, this does, resonate with me. It does, sort of hit a nerve. Either that, or these people that have created Avatar, secretly do have quite a big sort of a understanding of spiritual connection and stuff. And it might even be like a mixture of the two. But the little cartoon as well, Avatar is an Avatar The Last Airbender, is insane as well. I love that. It's got so much knowledge in there though.
Yeah, I just hope. I don't think there's an example of a sequel of a movie where it was deeper than the first part or better than the first part. In terms of action, obviously you have like Alien and Aliens, where Aliens is the main movie for Aliens, but it's the same with Terminator. But when it comes to good movies that shouldn't, like I cannot imagine Adjustment Bureau having a second part. So there are movies that you don't really need to have a second part, and I think Avatar is one of them. We don't really need a second part. It's just gonna be a movie about blue people this time, probably.
Yeah. I guess that's the thing though, if they are actually channeling that, and the sort of whoever's given them that, vision has been like, yeah, okay, I've done my job here, like I'm done. It's like, they're not going to be giving them a second sequel if they've already given them everything, so it will just end up being like a movie about blue aliens.
Yeah, that's
I think, yeah.
Really interesting the way they make these movies, because I have a theory that I recently was thinking about Wachowskis, and they're the ones that this Wachowski siblings. I mean, there used to be brothers, now they're sisters. It's basically a very interesting concept where I personally don't believe they exist. I think Matrix is such a complex and insightful movie that there's no way these people made it. I think it's the same as Bitcoin. There's no way one person created it. It's just too complex. So I think like occasionally they get an insight into the true nature of our world, and they wanna make it make it something that people will buy, so that they understand somehow how reality works. It's the same with Truman Show. Basically making a movie that seemingly will be about this, but it's actually about something else. And I always say there are two moments. There's a moment in Matrix when the architect speaks, and there's a moment in Truman Show where Christoph speaks, and they're both the creators of that world, and they explain. And these two, they're not even a minute long, these two sequences in both movies, but they explain the nature of human reality. And they're so different than the rest of the movie that you just have to listen and like, whoa, what did you say? And then you listen to it again, and you realize like, this is the message. That's why the movie exists, because it's supposed to tell you this little part. And most of these movies have that, but I think there's no way one person created it. It's just my personal theory, especially that Wachowski is like a play on words. It's a German and Polish word in one. Wach means in German means awake. It means that you're like, woke, you could say woke. And ski ski is a Polish ending of a surname, which is interesting that you have those two words, German and Polish, and they used to be adversaries. Like Germans and Poles are like enemies. They've always been enemies. And, Germany used to occupy Poland, and they fought wars and stuff like that. So it's a very interesting play on words, and that's one of the reasons why I don't believe that Wachowski is actually a real person or siblings. I don't think they're that, but it's just my theory. It has nothing to do with any knowledge that I have.
No, I haven't seen that movie, so I have to be honest, I have no idea what you're talking about.
You haven't seen Matrix?
Wait, is this still... Oh, The Matrix. I can't remember this bit.
Right. You have to see it, the first part. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure I remember like all the events that happened. I just can't remember everybody's name. I remember Neo. I remember the agent guy. That's it.
Have you? Yeah, if you've never seen it, that's an amazing story. I mean, just sit down.
No, I've seen The Matrix. I can't remember any of this stuff. I thought you were talking about a different movie.
Yeah, I'm thinking about making a video about just listing all the 434 videos. 434 movies that you should watch. There are movies that actually talk about 434 values or are related to what I talk about in the videos, and I want for people to realize, because like in your case, like you don't really remember Matrix, but it's such an important movie that you should definitely watch it again.
Oh God, actually, I do remember something in it. I was watching it a little while ago. I think it was when lockdown started or something. And when I was watching it, this was sort of a time where I was, going through a period of awakening, I guess. And as I was watching the movie, it was really interesting because I felt like it was sort of speaking, about sort of some of the stuff that goes on. Like I saw this clip of Bruce Lipton yesterday, and he was like, "Yeah, the Matrix isn't a movie; it's a documentary." And I was kind of starting to get that, but just as I sort of that really hit home. Oh God, the bit of the movie where there's like that child playing with like bricks that are like levitating?
Yeah, there's no spoon.
Oh God, they had my initials on them.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh shit.
There we go. Yeah. I'm making this movie about synchronicities now.
Yeah.
And even now, I mean, I don't even talk about this anymore because now as we're talking, I looked at the phone just to see how much I've recorded, and the time was 1 hour. And 4 minutes and 34 seconds. I immediately saw 4:34. It happens all the time now, and it's super crazy. Even the funny thing, you mentioned Bruce Lipton because people don't know, but a lot of 434 videos are based on the knowledge that is included in the books by Bruce Lipton from 2000 and I don't know, like 7. This is when I discovered Bruce Lipton. That was like 14 years ago. So he's been a very important part of my awakening and my understanding of reality. And now you're talking about him talking about Matrix, which I wasn't even aware of that he's actually talked about this. So yeah, it's all connected. But I'm gonna make a video soon about the algorithmic mechanisms behind reality and what synchronicity means really. It's evolving again. So, but that's just to go back to because I think we can finish. I was just getting over 2 hours now, so it's going to be already a very long podcast. But people love them, It's like Joe Rogan talks for 4 hours also. So,
I think something that's interesting though, it's just popped up is like the idea of So I said earlier that like everything is made of energy, and you made that video ages ago about like the warning to humans one, and I've forgotten a lot of stuff in it, but something that stuck with me from that was that the fabric of stuff that we're making now, our houses and stuff, they're not made out of something that's like made out of spiritual energy or has a spiritual intention. We're just creating like spiritless just matter, like our houses and stuff, and so it's actually having an effect on our bodies and stuff, and it if you go out into nature, I think it does actually completely like recalibrate things, but it's just brought to my attention the fact that we actually need to start doing that. We actually need to start plugging back into nature and actually being able to absorb the energy from it, and I think that will actually help to heal us a lot. It might sound really like hippie-ish, but genuinely I think there's stuff there in terms of its energy that we don't understand.
That's the metaphysical nature of this reality that we cannot tap into because we're too busy with trivia and distractions. That was actually an amazing night. Again, this video contains only a few % of what I really saw, what I was told that night. It was an incredible. It was really funny because it was an Airbnb, and it was like a weird environment that I wasn't familiar with. I wasn't tripping on my sofa as I always do, so I was basically just laying down and I closed my eyes. I didn't really know where I was because as soon as mushrooms kick in, you lose grip on reality. But when you're in your house, you know pretty much where is what. In that case, I had no idea where I was. So I basically just lay down on this bed and I put the phone with the recorder on next to me. And that was probably the longest message I've ever recorded uninterrupted because this message was the most beautiful and amazing message I've ever received. It was like a big movie and it lasted for like an hour or something. And I just kept talking everything I saw, everything they told me. And I tried to make a video out of this, but it's just a tiny percentage of what they showed me. The funny thing was that as soon as I stopped that vision, I went outside the house and everything that I saw was basically a continuation of the message. And they told me like, oh, look, because I could see the houses. There was this big city. I was looking at the houses and they said, look at these houses. They're all just like cubes. And look what you're doing with the plants. They're trying to climb the walls of these cubes. You cut them off. That's what you're doing. Nature is trying to integrate itself into your habitat, but you cut it off. You try to get rid of it. This is how unspiritual you are, how you get rid of everything that's spiritual, everything that gives you connection to nature. It was an amazing message, but I didn't talk about everything. It was just too much. The thing is that they warned us about what we're doing now. So this dash for technological development what we're doing now, that's insane. That's exactly the opposite direction where we should be going. And that trip was in 2017 or 18. So they said, you don't have much time. And I remember when the lockdowns happened, I was like, is that the beginning of what they were trying to warn me about? Because they said that we don't have much time, but it wasn't clear how much time. It could be a few generations, it could be a few months. I didn't know. And then when they starting this mad development of everything related to this Internet of Things, I was like, that's what they were talking about. Like, this is what they meant probably. And then when they started talking about vaccinating the whole population, I was like, oh, does it mean we're getting wiped out? And the whole thing like just started connecting. I was like, okay, let's see how things develop. But so far, so good. I don't really have a reason for now to think that something major is something negative happening that could trigger the collapse of humanity. But let's give them a chance. Let's see how the next few years go.
I think this was an intervention in a way.
Might have been.
I mean, there's like two sides of it where people are capitalizing on it for negative reasons and negative like intentions, but it's also, I think, a lot backfired. Like, people just start appreciating family more.
Yeah.
They start appreciating freedom more.
Like, one of the things is that the huge rise of nationalism, because they closed down all the borders. At the same time, people realize that you need to shield yourself from foreign influence. So on a purely biological level now, you need to recreate borders. And I'm like, that's the opposite of globalization. So hold on, are we going through globalization or not? Which one is it? I think that's something they're trying to design and control, but it's like, grabbing water probably. It's just trying to do something with this liquid thing that moves all the time, has a life of its own, and you're trying to somehow contain it, and yeah, it makes no sense. It's really...
Yeah, I think also as well, like, these people is the thing is that it's not like they all have one agenda or anything.
That's the other thing, the internal conflicts.
Lots of different people.
Yeah, it's conflict of interest on every possible level, plus greed, plus all kinds of... I don't even feel like these people know what they're doing. I mean, if you look at the history of humankind, they're the same perpetrators, they're the same, engineers or whatever they want to call themselves. They've been messing up every single thing they've touched. Even if they have a plan, it's not working out. And also, humans are really difficult to control. Anyone who's worked in anything related to managing human resources, and I've been in that job for 8 years, and actually then I switched to 434, which turned out to be a little bit like this still. I'm like, this makes no sense. Like, humans are so difficult to manage, and you try to lock them down and make them do this thing, not have sex. I'm like, you're just adding ingredients to like a huge human rebellion that you've never seen before. And I mean rebellion where you're gonna name people and find their addresses. We're gonna finally identify those who are trying to control us, which, they're trying to stay in the shadows. But this, if you're looking for a catalyst that has completely accelerated human awakening, that was it. That thing they did trying to lock us down, that was the moment when everybody was like, wait, what? I'm going to stay at home, get paid, be bored out of my mind, and have access to the internet? Okay, let's start reading. And I think that was the moment where everybody was like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know this. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. They started connecting the dots. I think there's a lot of stuff they do that has side effects, and that will be probably one of them, I hope.
Yeah. I think it's just important that we just, every time stuff comes up like this, because you can really easily get absorbed into it. I think what I try and do, like, when this stuff comes up, I'm like, I just try and focus on, right, so that's reminding me that we don't want any of this. So
Yeah.
instead of like getting really caught up with it, because it's really easy to slip into that, but I just use it almost sort of as like a meditation bell to be like, right, it's telling me this is exactly what I don't want. So it's almost like trying to train my body to have that immediate reaction to be like, right, I need to, flip over and focus on what I do want now. And I, and question where am I actually feeding into this narrative, because it's really easy to feel like they sort of have control over us, like a kind of a victim mindset. But it's like, actually, think of all the things I've done today. How many things have I very willingly, with my own free will, decided to play into that, and decided to divorce myself more from the spiritual energies and from nature, because it serves me in some way. So like if I'm feeling shit, it serves me to watch television. If I want, some mindless entertainment because I don't want to have to focus on stuff that makes me feel bad, I pick up my phone. So I guess it's like taking, accountability and finding that real sense of empowerment from being able to see, actually, where am I playing into this and where do I have power? Because as you said, you can't control people. People are, not easy to control at all. It's because we have our own free will to be able to, like people who are looking at like conspiracy theories and stuff, they're physically giving them their energy because they're constantly thinking about them.
Well, they've removed conspiracy theories. They're facts now.
Way.
Yeah, there's not even, you cannot talk about theories. They're not theories. They're actually headlines.
Well, yeah.
So you read about stuff like this all the time. I mean, when I would tell you I would have told you 3 years ago they're going to try to introduce some kind of weird passports that would not allow you to leave the house. They're like, what are you talking about? And now it's here.
Now it's here.
And you're like, what? When did that happen? How did that happen? And if we're truly connected on a metaphysical level, I think all of this doesn't really matter what's happening here on this physical level.
Yeah.
And I think the whole world is, when it was, back then it was difficult to get people on our side, but now it's a piece of cake. Like, you really want to be a part of this technocratic, weird socialism, whatever that is they're trying to build now? Well, maybe we should all start doing our own thing. We should start creating this new reality, and we should start from, the most basic stuff, opening your mind. And then we can move on. We can teach you about the lies that you live in. And now the people are very receptive to every truth, the nature of the reality, because everybody's lost. And now we're going to talk to you about money, what cryptocurrency does, and how you can free yourself from this broken system of governing whatever finances in the world that doesn't make sense anymore. And you can go on like this until you realize that, oh, hold on, I don't need any of this. I don't need the government. I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. For me personally, it's amazing how this whole 44 narrative shifted from the metaphysical stuff, and now it's going to the truth movement, and now everything will connect. Like this truth movement will give power to people to explore further, because once you open their minds into the truth about this reality, you can open their minds to the metaphysical aspects of this reality.
Yeah.
And it's you can look at how psychedelics are now being legalized everywhere. I think the whole movement is gaining momentum. I think it's going to be amazing, just to see what it develops into.
And it's like, how much do you even need to sort of look at what is or isn't going on? I feel like you could spend your life trying to figure out what's actually going on, and I've sort of got to the point where I'm like, actually, I just want to start creating what I want now.
Yeah.
I don't need to know what's bad. I don't need a list of shit on my doorstep. I just need to be able to be like, okay, I know something's going wrong here, whatever that is. Let's create what we actually want.
That's beautiful, because I think what they didn't take into account is that by defining what it is that you don't want, you define what your reality should be. And I think they unwillingly gave us that power. They gave us this awareness because people were asleep. It's just 9 to 5, just buy my stuff and then go to sleep. And that's it's just vicious circle of consumerism. But now people were cut off from that, and they were like, wait, what am I about? What's my existence about? And it's like a big wake-up call, and everybody's like, oh, I don't like this, actually. Like, people try getting people back to the office now. After 1 year,
I don't want to go.
Nobody wants to go. And I think there's no way. Also, giving people free money for a year. Now try to make them work. Imagine how much more lazy everybody gets. Like this whole system is going to just start breaking down because of that mainly. I mean,
in a way, I think it's good though, because it's like people sort of, I mean, not the lazy part, but just obviously the part where people are like, actually, I don't need to fucking have like, 50k a year, and actually, we can use our money wisely to be able to buy a plot of land, grow our own veg. And we're directly taking what we, what we need to sustain ourselves with from the earth, and we're giving back to it.
Yeah.
Instead of this parasitic one-way stuff. What we're just taking.
I'm trying to tell everybody that this is all a positive thing, even though it looks, you devastate economy and human life. So that's it's not positive. But I think we will look back at this from a perspective of human consciousness development, and we'll be like, that was a turning point. That was a moment where we realized that, for me personally, it's just validation of everything I've been talking about. And I'm excited about 434 going in a different direction. Well, not different, but expanding a little. This Facebook thing that happened recently, this is a blessing, because it will actually allow me to gain so many new followers, so many people who will actually enter into the 434 space basically from outside. Because many people contact me all the time saying, oh, you're doing these videos about truth and stuff, but who are these machine elves? And then the good thing is that it happened because I had a video once that went viral. It's going to be uploaded on the March 8th, so for International Women's Day, about how women beauty is being destroyed. So I'm going to upload it just to Facebook to see how it works. That video went viral 5 years ago. It had like close to 60 million views. But at that time, I didn't have any contact on Facebook. And people were like, oh, that's cool, but you don't do anything else, so whatever. Now, there's 100 videos on 434. And as soon as you upload a video like that, something goes viral. And people start asking questions like, what are machine elves? And I send them links. I don't talk to them. I just send them links because it's already explained. And soon I'll be able to send them the link to the book. So the whole thing is much easier. It's much quicker, and you gain people. You invite people, and it's immediate. You send them a link. It's 5 seconds, and they're hooked up. And then you have people who share these videos. So I think Machine Elves told me that a long time ago. They said you need to be patient. They said it 3 years ago. They were like, just be patient and see what happens. So they said your whole life will be around this, and you don't even understand what it's going to change. I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. And for 2 years, nothing was happening. It was just steady growth at one rate, nothing was happening. And then last trip they told me, oh, things gonna change. Like you're now a leader that's supposed to change things, and we're gonna show you what's. I'm like, okay, let's see.
Wow. How did they want you to change things though?
Well, they always give me, I need to make a video about how they predict future. They tell me something. Like they told me once, they said, stop messing around, because I had a job. I worked on for a company that was making wind turbines. It was the biggest company, wind power energy company on the planet. And I hated that job. I absolutely hated the job, and the people I worked with, it was really bad. And they said, quit messing around, because you need a clear mind where you can concentrate on making videos. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I continued doing what I was doing. So basically not really dedicating myself to that job. They got rid of me. It was partially my fault. The other thing was that I had a really bad manager who was remote, and he was in Germany, I was in England, and we couldn't make this thing work. And they hated us. The company we worked for hated us, and we didn't like them. So it was supposed to fall apart. But the moment I had my own office, I was training people, it was really good. It was a lot of money. And when I lost this job, I was like, okay, I gotta go back to looking for a job, and I don't feel like it. But for 9 months, I couldn't find a well-paying job. I worked for Amazon as a like hiring people. I'm gonna make a video about this soon. So I learned a lot about Amazon when I did that. And I didn't really know what I was doing. Like I didn't really feel like anything's progressing, but that was back in 2016. That was when I made that viral video. And that 9 months turned out to be most important 9 months of my life, because that video went viral, then tens of millions of people watched it. It gave birth, in 3 years, it gave birth to 434. So everything that happens always happens for a reason. But Machine Elves told me, they said, you should concentrate on your job so you can continue what you're doing, because in those 9 months, I couldn't really concentrate on making videos. I believe, had I not, if I had the ability to make this video now, I think it would allow 434 to explode. But because it happened back then, the whole process was delayed by about 3 years. It's just my assumption. I'm not sure if it's true. But they also told me about the pandemic. They said, you need to brace yourself because something's going to change now. That was like 2 months before the whole thing started. Yeah, they said, you're going now into a new reality where everything will be super different. So get ready for this. And you need to be resilient. You need to change your mindset. And 434 will have a completely new growth spurt now. It will be a different reality. And I was like, okay. So that happened. And they were like, we told you. But 2 months ago, they said, you have a new job now. Your job will be now to be a leader of the truth movement. I'm like, is it that not what I'm doing now? And they're like, no, it's going to be different. I was like, I already know. I don't question it. I'm like, okay, bring it on. And now this thing with Facebook happened. There's one of my old videos, We're Not Sheep, We're Not Cattle, just it has like 500,000 views now. And I suddenly gained like 20,000 followers within a few weeks. And I know the growth of Facebook, because I know Facebook very well. I don't know YouTube that well. But Facebook, it's my territory. I'm like, this is going to be huge. Like, I know now that Facebook will be the main driver for 434 to grow. And it's always when something happens, they tell me beforehand, like a few months before, they'll tell me that it's going to happen. And it's one of the reasons why I know that this thing is not just, it's not just my imagination. These things happen. It's just, it's like a prediction, then it all happens. So I'm starting to worry, because they're not small things. Like with this pandemic thing, they told me this. I was like, oh, I don't like this. I don't think I like what's going to happen. They're like, be careful. It's going to be interesting, but it's going to be different. Now, they said your vacation is over. That's what they said. Because I was very, yeah.
What was that before then?
No, before that, it was just me having it's just 9 to 5 job. Occasionally I would make a 434 video. It was, in terms of mindset, it was very relaxed. It was just autopilot thing. I would just work on this and whatever. It wasn't a big thing. As soon as the pandemic happened, everybody started coming to me like, oh, dude, what's going on? Like, we don't understand, because they didn't know what was going on. They were like, is this whole virus real? Is it true? And I started explaining everything. And then suddenly I found myself in a situation where I'm explaining things. And I thought, hold on. That means if I have access to people, I need to take advantage of it, and I need to tell them what's going on. So I started with the We're Not Cattle, We're Not Sheep video, which is very different than the rest of 434 videos. Yeah. And I was like, okay, that was a nice video. It had like 26,000 views. It was more popular than other videos. I was like, let's not do this again. But then suddenly that video blew up on Facebook, and I was like, hold on. Facebook is a whole different animal, so maybe we should work on that. And I made the video about lies. And that has 250,000 views in like, 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do now. So the next video is going to be about money. And I'm going to explain how psychedelics and money are connected, and how this awakening process that's happening with the psychedelic movement actually happens in the finance world, and how everybody now can completely detach themselves from this broken financial system by investing into crypto and basically putting very little money to it and becoming independent in the future. So there's the whole thing and I have a list of videos for Facebook now where I'm going to talk about the truth about videos. I want to talk about the moon. There was a lot of videos that I couldn't make for 434 on YouTube because people were very metaphysical, very psychedelic oriented, and I didn't want to lose this audience. But now I have a whole new audience on Facebook, which I can feed information to that wasn't really that interesting for 434 people on YouTube. So Machine Elves told me that. They said this thing will be growing and you don't know how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. You just have to be patient. And I could have stopped making these videos a long time ago, but now that I see this Facebook thing just gave me understanding that this process really will be a work of a lifetime, probably continued by other people once I'm gone. That's what they told me also. They said the 434 movement will become that. Well, what they said my job is to educate millions of people, which is already happening actually. And they said after you cross the 7 million threshold, things will change, like we'll step in. And I'm like, okay, that was the first message I got from them 5 years ago. So that's the reason why I started 434. So I always tell everybody, I always say to everybody, don't don't be, this generation now is all about instant gratification. Everything needs to happen instantly now, and if it's not happening now, then it's not valuable. And the thing is that, no, you need to wait. Great things require a lot of time. So whatever you're doing, just give it time and work on it. Never stop working on it, because it pays off.
That's helpful actually for me personally, because I keep thinking, like, if I don't have everything, if I'm not, spiritually connected, like, 100% enlightened right this second, there's something wrong with me. It's like, good things do take a lot of time. But like, I was just wondering, so you're talking about sort of building things up. How do you make sure that, like, because you've said before that the machine elves have sort of told you off and stuff, like when you've done the videos wrong and they're like, no, Peter, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
So, and you've done, this last one, like, wrong or whatever, and you need to change this aspect next time. So it's like, how do you make sure that the videos about stuff that's really serious and, about, like, about the truth about things and stuff, how do you make sure that that's, like, kind of, balanced out by still embodying those, like, those values of, like, 434, joy, love, hope?
Well, it comes naturally, because they're not really conflicting messages or conflicting videos. So my problem is that we're dealing with two aspects of reality. We have the physical and metaphysical. The physical part is not that important from the metaphysical perspective, and for people who engage in the metaphysical part, they're not really that interested in the physical part. So they're seemingly two separate worlds. And when I say that I do a video in the wrong way, it's not that I say something that's false. It's basically me not saying enough. I basically try to put as much information in the video as possible, and when I fail at it, it's basically not what I was told, because I was told so much more. I feel that I let everybody down, but people don't know about this. People still like the video, and they get a lot out of it. It's just me who knows that there was so much more, and I failed at conveying that message because it's just too complex, and it gets weird when I start talking about everything. So the real problem is how to make the message as comprehensible, as easy to understand for everybody, at the same time making it true to the source. So that's the real challenge that I have. Another challenge that I had at the beginning of 434 was that I'm myself made of two separate parts. One is the one that is interested in the human reality, like the lies and the truths, and this metaphysical existence that appeared in my life only 5 years ago. So very often when I try to combine these things, it's a disaster. And that you could see in a video about sexuality. And we talked about this. So basically, how it all happened. But basically, I tried talking about my view on human sexuality, and people, they started unsubscribing in droves. They hated that video.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that was actually a video that I had to remove, because it was a video that wasn't a well-made video. It wasn't good. So I removed it, and I took some time, I read all the comments, and then I re-uploaded this video in a completely different form. That video was liked. So the thing is that 434 community is actually shaping me, and that's something Machine Elves told me a long time ago. They said, you are a creator, but at the same time, you're like a DJ. You are changing, you're remixing everything that goes into your field of vision. You basically get the information into your brain, and then you analyze it and you process it, and whatever comes out of your mouth is this processed information that you gave a chunk of yourself to. And basically, they said that's what your job is. You're supposed to give people our messages, but you also include a part of your life into it, because you're a part of that. And for me, that's the biggest challenge. It's basically trying to figure out what it is that I can talk about so that I don't alienate people, at the same time so that I don't drift away too much into the metaphysical. So combining these two words is quite difficult. But now, with having instant feedback on these videos, every video is posted on it's 10 platforms now. All the Snapchats, Facebook, BitChutes, and so on, they're everywhere, and there's a comment section on each of them. So with every videos, I have instant feedback of hundreds of comments, or even thousands of comments, and I read all of them. I read every single comment, and I also get messages. So half of my work that doesn't pay anything, it's the most difficult job on the planet, and it pays very little. That's 434 what it is. It's basically me going through all these comments, messages, emails. It's a crazy job, and it allows me actually to make the next video much better. And also it allows me to shift my understanding of things. Like I made this video about porn recently. I explained what Machine Elves told me about porn. And according to them is, from our perspective, the way they look at us, what we do, they said, oh, it's that thing you engage and you actually observe other people having sex. And that was it. But people were angry at me that I talked about porn in positive terms, because for them there's a lot of exploitation and rape and abuse in the porn industry, and I'm supposed to take it into account. They forgot that I'm talking about what Machine Elves think about humans engaging in watching porn. So that's a bit problematic. But I arrived at a mindset where I don't care about this anymore, where I'm talking about the messages from Machine Elves and I detach myself from the result of that creation. And it was like, okay, I was expecting negative feedback. I wasn't expecting it to be so immature, but that's fine. It's your opinion. You can do whatever you want with this. But now with this split into Facebook 434 and YouTube 434, I'm hoping that I can both create something for people who are engaged in understanding of the physical reality. Like the video, I want to talk about what the moon really is. That's a video that I'm really passionate about, because I want to talk about moon. I know so much about moon that nobody else knows, that it's going to be very interesting videos, but it doesn't really fit into the 434 metaphysical narrative, because it's part of our physical, understanding of reality here in this life, the human life. But it's going to fit perfectly into this Facebook 434 narrative, so it's going to be great. And of course, the 434 metaphysical YouTube people can benefit from that too. In the same way as the metaphysical videos are good for Facebook people. These people will start merging. At some point, they'll meet somewhere. And I think it will help me understand myself what it is that I'm supposed to do, because Machine Elves told me it's going to be a process. And they said, don't get distracted, don't get discouraged. It's going to be a difficult process. It's going to take a lot of time, but you're going to get there eventually. And this is going to be, your work will continue for a very long time. So be patient, and we'll be there with you. So it is a very difficult process, but I learned with this Facebook thing that things have a way of working out, and that's what I talked about in the video about things being too much, because I felt like YouTube was like, this 44 thing was too much. I cannot handle it anymore. There's just too much work. I'm working way too much, because I'm working like 18-hour days all the time, and it's because it's mostly financial reasons, but also it's my passion. But it got too much. I got to a point where I couldn't sleep because of the LED light exposure. Basically, my melatonin was gone, because the screens just made me think that it's day, all day long is day. So you wake up middle of the night, it's a daylight. For my eyes, it doesn't make a difference, it's just bright, so it's the sun, so you don't have to sleep. And I realized that now, because things are going in a different direction, that means that I'll be taken care of. And again, this is what we talked about. Like, you need to remember that you're always taken care of, because the moment where I started doubting the whole thing, I didn't talk about this, I haven't told this anyone. There was a moment at the end of last year with the pandemic and everything where I felt like, am I doing the right thing? Is it something I'm supposed to do? And the moment I thought that, I was told, things gonna change, and now you're gonna do something in a bit of a different direction. So wait and you'll see. And this thing happened. I forgot to mention that Facebook monetized me. Yeah, that's another, I forgot to tell you about this. That's another thing that happened recently. That's also the reason why everything started going viral, because once you get monetized, then Facebook starts helping you. For 2 years, that thing was flat. There was nothing. The number of followers was steady, increasing by 10 per week. That's like, you would get something close to 500 people a year. That's pretty much nothing in social media world. But now I get 20,000 people with one video, and I hope this will continue, and I know it will continue because I know how Facebook works. So the whole thing has a life of its own, and I'm just a vehicle for the whole messaging system. And Machine Elves told me that I'll be like a conduit, like a connector between two worlds. And they said you'll be channeling all these messages. But however you do it, that's up to you. And if part of that is splitting into Facebook 434 and YouTube 434, that's, so be it. That's your job. I haven't taken mushrooms in quite a long time, so I'm going to take them soon. And I'm going to do something new. I'm going to mix Liberty caps with cubensis just to see the effects. So I'm hoping they're going to give me an update.
Are you sure that's a good idea?
Yes, because I know what they do separately. I want to see what they do together, but it's not going to be a huge dose. It's just that I want to see how they, if they create something new. I've never heard of anyone doing that. So I want to see, I'm sure people have done it, but I want to see how it works for me. So it must be interesting because like two different psychedelics. So I want to see if they work in synergy or if they start fighting each other. So it might be an interesting experience. But I'm looking forward to it because I want to see what the update's going to be like. So I want to learn if there's something else they want to tell me about. But I hope I answered your question. It's a complex process.
Definitely, but it's really, I'm really glad things are working out for you though.
It has started working out recently because
have you ever heard of entheonation?
What, sorry?
Entheonation, like
no.
entheogens, but entheonation.
No.
I think it's a podcast. I'm not even sure, but they upload all of their content onto YouTube. But it's run by this woman called Liana, I think is her name. And she was talking about like what you were saying about your experience where you're like, I don't know how I'm supposed to take these messages and make them into something and how I'm going to be guided with it. I think she's like what you said like really reminded me of something she's talking about because she was saying about how she's like, instead of having mushrooms, she journeyed a lot with ayahuasca, and that's where she got a lot of her downloads, healing, connection, all of that kind of stuff from. And they started telling her, they're like, you're going to, you know a lot about tech from your job, so you're going to be bridging a world between technology and this metaphysical information, and you're going to be like a conduit between the worlds, but you're also going to be creating a platform where you're actually spreading it out to people, and you'll have the technical know-how to be able to find that audience and actually deliver the content to the people that need to see it. And it's really interesting because, maybe this stuff is actually happening on quite a wide scale, and perhaps like I said earlier about like like maybe machine elves and stuff use people who have the know-how in terms of creating a film and stuff in order to download and give them the idea that they need to spread it out. It's really similarly reminding me of that, but also of I think there's quite a few people now who have received the downloads and stuff. They're getting this information, and then they're like, so what's my purpose? And then they're like telling them, your purpose is just to spread this with people on like on platforms like YouTube and stuff. And they're like, what? That's it? Like, that sounds so like mundane. But yeah, they're just like, well, that's the quickest way to get the information out there.
That's exactly
it's really
the same
that
message.
Channel, I'd recommend you watch it if you haven't seen it. It's really good. They talk a lot about mushrooms.
You're not the first one who tells me about a message like this, because that's the exact same message I was given. I had the same reaction. I was like, what, you mean that's it? Just making videos? And they were like, and they were like, wait, you'll see. And of course, it's absolutely not just the YouTube videos, because the way 44 changed my life is, starting from the fact that I quit my job because of that. I thought it's just going to be some videos for me for me and my family, just so they know what it's like to trip on mushrooms. And I was recently talking to someone, and I said how 44 name was created. I was sitting in the middle of my office. I was supposed to do my job, but I wasn't really interested in working, so I basically was thinking about what should I call the YouTube channel. And I was sitting from my keyboard, and it was the moment where I have to type the name of the YouTube channel, and I was thinking, what should I call it? Mushroom Experiences? Whatever. And I thought the only thing that really makes sense is this crazy synchronicity that happens all the time, and that's the one that I talk to the entities all the time. That's what machine elves explain to me, and that's the one that has the most value. I was like, okay, let's do it 44. And that was the moment when I came up with this. But it wasn't me, it was actually them. Because they kept telling me about 44 all the time. They explained the whole thing to me. And then when I named the channel 434, they said, okay, from now on, we'll refer to everything as 434. That was the moment when they said, if you call it 434, we'll call it 434. Because back then, they used to call it Love, Joy, and Hope. And from that moment on, they started referring to it as the name, only to this. What people don't really know, and I think I might have mentioned it in previous podcasts when I talked to people, these videos are not mine. And I've said it many times, but what people don't understand is that they're really not mine, because there's only my voice in it. The messages from Machine Elves and the script for the video is from them. They gave me a script, what a video should contain, with every single element, how I'm supposed to talk, what messages to, how I'm supposed to make the visualization, everything, music. They said, this is what it needs to look like. I remember I was sitting in my car. I had a trip once when I was in the summer. I was sitting in my car and I was talking to them, and they gave me a script and I wrote it down. I have a huge page with elements that every video needs to contain. The moment I implemented it, my video started getting millions of views. And it's not my job, it's them, because I've been a video producer since 2007. And the biggest number of views I've ever gotten was 100,000 views. And the moment they gave me the script, they said, this is what you need to do, it started going millions and tens of millions. So it's not just that they're just YouTube videos, and it's not just me, it's the whole system. They told me that there's, I made a video about 47 people who are here who have a job. I distanced myself. I distanced myself from that theory. It's not a theory. Basically, I don't want to talk about this because people get crazy. They think, oh, I'm one of 47, I'm whatever. I said, I don't have a clue who these people are. They just gave me an information that this is what it looks like. But they told me, like, there's a whole network of people. And my doubt about my job in this, my task that I have as 434 last year, at the end of last year, was, am I really the right person, or have they given up on me? Because that came after having a break from mushrooms for almost a year. I couldn't trip for almost a year. And I was starting to lose faith in the whole thing. And that's actually the first time that I started thinking about this. So I forgot that that's how I felt. But yeah, then they gave me a guy who is Star Pilot's friend who lives here. And they were like, he's going to show you and he's going to give you the information. And he took me to a field not far from here, to a meadow, and he showed me where to find Liberty caps and what they look like. He taught me the whole thing. And there's so much magical stuff that happened with him and everything else, and I need to make a video about this. But it's a whole complex system. Again, it's this metaphysical reality we know nothing about. And they're helping us as much as they can, and it's the same message. This woman you're talking about, she got the same message, exact the same thing, word by word. Yeah. The same stuff.
And she was like, this doesn't make sense. I'm going to
I said the same thing.
Get on with my job. And
I said, I was like, I have
ignore it.
Yeah, I said, how am I supposed to do it? I have a job. There's nothing I can do. I can make one video a month because I'm doing it on a train on my way to work. I'm doing it on my lunch break. I mean, what, you want me to die? And they're like, relax, breathe, you'll see. And then suddenly, the company I worked for, I don't know what I don't want to go into details, so maybe I'm going to talk about this one. There was a huge corporation. I worked for even bigger corporation, and I discovered something. It's, again, something that has to do with the truth movement. I basically found out how they're doing some shady stuff, and I went with this to the top. And I basically said, this is what I know. You need to stop doing this because it's unethical, it's dangerous, and you cannot do this. You cannot treat people like this. So they basically offered me something called a settlement agreement. So basically, they wanted to keep my mouth shut with a huge amount of money. And they said, you take this and you go, or you can get in a legal battle with us, which I already had planned. I was after speaking to a lawyer, and then it turned out that it could be a big battle. And I came back home and I thought, what is it that I'm going to do? I have this... because I didn't want to go back to the office anymore. I was like, this is pointless. I'm not going there to have a huge battle, and then I'm going to get lawyers involved. A lot of people would lose their job. Maybe more stuff would happen. That was some serious stuff. And I was like, let's not do this. I have 434. It's giving me some financial background, some financial foundations to start things. It's not big yet enough, but it should be fine. It was a big leap of faith. I was like, I need to do this. And then I took mushrooms. They were like, yep, that's your next stage. You're supposed to do it now. And that was the smartest thing I've ever done in my life, because it as soon as I quit that job, number one, it turned out that what I was planning to do actually happened anyway. Not only because of the pandemic. By the way, I jumped off that boat only 4 months before the pandemic hit, and my industry disappeared. So the whole job just went off, the face of the earth. It doesn't exist anymore. I found out the project I was working on was shut down for the exact reasons I was trying to, was trying to expose. They actually got exposed anyway, and it turned out that I was going anyway, and I just didn't know about this. And Machine Elves told me, they said, like, now it's a completely new reality. It's vacation for you now. They said it's time for you to shift focus and to rearrange your lifestyle. And they were completely right. I was like, I'm going to take this money they offered me and I'm going to invest it in 434. So I used my savings pretty much to support myself. And then 3 months from that moment, after 3 months, I made a video called "You Have Power." No, you have powers. And then that thing blew up and I gained so many new supporters, financial supporters. I got so much money out of that video. I was like, oh, this thing actually can support me. Like, this is something I can live off. And I dove into just writing 44 videos like crazy because it turned out that's my job now. That was the moment when I believed that that's what I'm supposed to do. But that video was the first type of a video where I was talking to people about how they need to start thinking about their understanding of reality, when I was trying to motivate them, when I was becoming this leader that later developed into, it gave me the courage to make the "You're Not Cattle, You're Not Sheep" video when the pandemic hit. I was so angry with that situation where I said, I need to make a video about this. And now it's a completely new reality. Like, this was the smartest thing I ever did. It changed my life. But it started with that simple message saying that you just need to be patient, you need to relax and understand that things have a way of working out, and you need to have courage. Because I made a video about courage too. And it's about just doing what you're supposed to do, because fear is just a temporary illusion of reality that hasn't happened yet. And it probably never will. But you give it power because you think that it's the true version of reality, and it's not. So I changed the course of my life basically by being just courageous, just basically being someone who has the guts to, because I was scared. I was really scared. That was I quit my job to be a YouTuber. I mean, come on. And I had only, at that time I had like 30,000 subscribers. I mean, nobody does it with 30,000 subscribers. It's just, it's crazy. But it turned out the smartest decision ever, because it allowed me to finish. It turned out that I couldn't finish. There was no way I would be finishing this book if I hadn't left that job, because I'm still finishing it. It's so big now. I'm editing it down. I'm trying to get rid of chapters now because it's too big. So it's crazy, and I don't know what the book's gonna change. I have no idea what Facebook's gonna be like. It's a whole new thing, and I didn't know about the pandemic, what was happening. So one thing that I learned is to stop questioning my reality. And when I think that it's too much, because I thought at that time that it's too much, like the whole legal stuff I got myself involved into. It was the first time, by the way, because I actually sued one of my employers a long time ago, and I was successful. But I didn't want to go through this again. It's not a pleasant experience to be entangled in like legal battles. But I did have the experience, and at that situation, I was the one it was basically me talking about the conditions of my departure. And I basically negotiated the whole thing, and I did it on my terms. And I'm very happy because I left on very good terms with them. I was basically, it was amicable. I said, that's fine, I'm gonna leave. I didn't say what I had planned. I didn't explain to them what was supposed to happen, but it happened anyway. And I'm glad that I wasn't a part of this. So you always need to listen to Machine Elves, really. It's something that they will tell you many times, and people have the tendency to ignore these things. Like, they're important and people don't pay attention to them. And I always tell them the metaphysical is the true source of information in your life. And your gut feeling, your whatever you believe in, that's what you need to follow. Okay, I think we should finish now because it got to how many?
I'm tired.
Yeah,
I love that bit that you ended on there. That was perfect.
The thing is that I'll probably need to rearrange it just so that people.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll see how it works out, but yeah, let's see what happens to this. It always has its own life. I don't think I haven't had a podcast that long, and people always say like. There's a part of people who says, 3 hours? No, that's too long. And some people are like, I wish it was longer. So that's
I know.
Yeah.
I think some people listen to it like when they're, I don't know, making tea or whatever, because people get lonely, I think.
Well, that's what we all do now. Once you realize that you can, do the dishes or whatever and listen to podcasts, that's what everybody's doing. So, but it hasn't felt like 3 hours. This is crazy. Like, as always with you, I always talk to you and it's like a 5-minute conversation. So
Yeah.
Listen, thank you very much that you decided to talk to me. Again, it's not like we've never talked before. And it's, that you dedicated 3 hours of your life again to talk to me. So that's really cool.
That's fine.
I hope that people will love this conversation as much as I did. It was really interesting. I must say that I always find it fascinating how we agree on so many things. That's really good.
Yeah.
So it should be a good podcast.
Thanks, Vito.
If you enjoy our conversation, please sponsor 434 through Matt is listed on the screen and in the video description. Thank you for your help.